Tom! No answer. Tom! Still no answer. Where is that boy? Tom! Aunt Polly pulled down her glasses and looked around. Then she put them up and looked under. She didn't often look through them for something as small as a boy. Her glasses were for show, not for seeing. She could see just as well through a pair of pot lids. She looked around, puzzled, and said, "If I get hold of you, I'll—" She didn't finish, because she was now bending down, poking under the bed with a broom. She only found the cat. "I never saw the like of that boy." She went to the door and looked out into the garden, full of tomato plants and weeds. Still no Tom. She shouted, "Yo-oo-oo, Tom!" There was a noise behind her. She turned just in time to catch a small boy by the back of his jacket as he tried to run away. "There! I should have thought of that closet. What were you doing in there?" "Nothing. Nothing. Look at your hands. And your mouth. What's that all over you?" "I don't know, Aunt." "Well, I know. It's jam. How many times have I told you to leave that jam alone? Hand me that switch." The switch hovered in the air. The danger was real. "My! Look behind you, Aunt!" Aunt Polly turned around quickly. Tom ran off, climbed the high fence, and was gone. Aunt Polly stood surprised, then laughed. "Oh, that boy! Will I ever learn? He's tricked me enough times by now, but he always does it differently. How can I ever guess what he'll do next? He knows just how long he can push me before I get angry. And he knows if he makes me laugh, I won't punish him. I'm not doing right by him. Spare the rod and spoil the child, as the good book says. I'm letting us both down. He's full of mischief, but he's my dead sister's boy. I just can't bring myself to punish him. Every time I let him off, I feel guilty. And every time I hit him, it breaks my heart. Well, if he skips school this afternoon, I'll make him work tomorrow to punish him. It's hard to make him work on a Saturday, but I've got to try or I'll ruin him." Tom did skip school and had a good time. He got back home just in time to help Jim, the small black boy, saw wood and split kindling for the next day. At least, he was there to tell Jim his adventures while Jim did most of the work. Tom's half-brother Sid had already finished his part of the work, picking up chips. Sid was a quiet boy and never got into trouble. During supper, as Tom tried to steal some sugar, Aunt Polly asked him tricky questions. She wanted to catch him in a lie. She believed she was clever at this, and she enjoyed her little tricks. She said, "Tom, was it warm in school today?" "Yes'm." "Very warm, wasn't it?" "Yes'm." "Didn't you want to go swimming?" Tom felt a bit scared. He looked at Aunt Polly's face, but it told him nothing. So he said, "No, not very much." Aunt Polly felt his shirt and said, "But you're not too warm now." Tom knew she was checking if his shirt was dry. He quickly said, "Some of us poured water on our heads. Mine's still damp. See?" Aunt Polly was annoyed she hadn't thought of that. She tried again. "Tom, you didn't have to unbutton your shirt collar to pour water on your head, did you? Unbutton your jacket." Tom's face brightened. He opened his jacket. His shirt collar was still buttoned. "All right, go on then. I thought you had skipped school and gone swimming. But I forgive you, Tom. I guess you're better than you look. This time." She was half disappointed she hadn't caught him, and half glad he seemed to be good for once. But Sid said, "I thought you sewed his collar with white thread, Aunt Polly, but it's black." "I did sew it with white." "Tom?" Tom didn't wait. As he left, he said, "Sid, I'll get you for that." In a safe place, Tom looked at the two large needles in his jacket, one with white thread and one with black. He said, "She'd never have noticed if it wasn't for Sid. Sometimes she sews it with white, sometimes with black. I can't keep track, but I'll get Sid for that." Tom was not the model boy of the village. He knew the model boy very well, and hated him. Within 2 minutes, he had forgotten his troubles. A new interest had taken over, whistling a new tune he had just learned. It had a bird-like sound, made by touching the tongue to the roof of the mouth at short intervals. Tom quickly got the hang of it and walked down the street, whistling happily. The summer evenings were long. It wasn't dark yet. Tom stopped whistling when he saw a boy a bit bigger than himself. The boy was new in town and well-dressed, which was surprising. His cap was fancy, his clothes were new, and he even had shoes on a Friday. Tom stared at him, feeling jealous. Finally, Tom said, "I can beat you up. I'd like to see you try." "Well, I can." "No, you can't." "Yes, I can." "No, you can't." "Can." "Can't." There was a pause. Then Tom said, "What's your name?" "None of your business." "Well, I'll make it my business." "Why don't you then?" "If you say much more, I will." "Much, much, much. There now." "Oh, you think you're smart, don't you? I could beat you with one hand tied behind me." "Why don't you do it then? You say you can." "Well, I will if you fool with me." "Oh, yes, I've seen whole families like you." "Smarty. You think you're something, don't you?" "Oh, what a hat." "You can hit that hat if you don't like it. I dare you to knock it off." "You're a liar." "You're another. You're a fighting liar and won't take it back." "Aw, take a walk." "If you give me more sass, I'll throw a rock at your head." "Of course you will." "Well, I will." "Then why don't you do it? What are you waiting for?" "I ain't afraid." "You are." "I ain't." "You are." They stood shoulder to shoulder, pushing with all their might. Neither could get an advantage. Finally, they both relaxed, and Tom said, "You're a coward. I'll tell my big brother on you, and he can beat you up." "What do I care for your big brother? I've got a brother bigger than he is." "That's a lie." "Your saying so doesn't make it so." Tom drew a line in the dust and said, "I dare you to step over that, and I'll beat you up." The new boy stepped over and said, "Now you said you'd do it. Let's see you do it." Tom struck at him, and they tumbled to the ground, fighting. After a minute, Tom was on top, punching the new boy. "Say enough!" The boy struggled, crying, "Say enough!" Tom kept hitting him. Finally, the boy said, "Enough!" Tom let him up. "Now you know. Don't mess with me again." The new boy went off, crying. Tom felt proud and started walking away. The new boy picked up a stone, threw it, and hit Tom in the back. Tom chased him home, now knowing where he lived. Tom stood at the gate, daring the boy to come out, but he only made faces from the window. Finally, the boy's mother appeared and called Tom a bad, rude child and told him to go away. Tom left, but he promised to get that boy next time. He got home late and climbed in through the window, only to find Aunt Polly waiting. When she saw his clothes, she decided he would work hard all day Saturday as punishment. Saturday morning arrived and everything was bright and lively. The sun was shining and everyone felt happy. Birds were singing and people had smiles on their faces. The locust trees were in bloom and the air smelled sweet. Cardiff Hill, beyond the village, looked green and peaceful. like a dreamy, inviting place. Tom Sawyer came out with a bucket of whitewash and a long-handled brush. He looked at the fence and felt very sad. The fence was long, about 30 yards, and 9 feet high. He felt like life was hard and boring. He sighed, dipped his brush in the whitewash, and started painting. He painted a little, but it didn't make much difference. He looked at the large fence still left to paint and felt discouraged. He sat down, feeling hopeless. Just then, Jim came out of the gate with a tin pail, singing Buffalo Gals. Tom remembered that fetching water from the town pump used to be a job he hated. But now, he thought it might be fun, because there were always boys and girls at the pump, playing and talking. He remembered that Jim usually took a long time to get back with the water. "Say, Jim," Tom said, "I'll fetch the water if you'll whitewash some." Jim shook his head. "Can't, Mars Tom. Miss Polly told me to get the water and not to fool around. She said you'd ask me to whitewash, but I can't. She said she'd do the whitewashing herself." "Never mind what she said, Jim. She always talks like that. Give me the bucket. I won't be gone long. She won't know." "Oh, I can't, Mars Tom. Miss Polly would be really mad. She'd punish me for sure. She never really punishes anyone. She just talks. Here, I'll give you a marble, a white one." Jim started to waver. "A white marble. That's a nice one. But Mars Tom, I'm scared of Miss Polly. And if you do it, I'll show you my sore toe." Jim couldn't resist. He put down his pail, took the marble, and bent over to see Tom's toe. While Jim was distracted, Tom started whitewashing quickly. Suddenly, Aunt Polly came out, and Jim ran away with his pail. Tom continued painting, but his energy didn't last long. He started thinking about the fun he was missing, and his sadness grew. Soon other boys would come by, making fun of him for having to work. Tom took out his small collection of toys and marbles, thinking about how he could trade them for help. But he didn't have enough to trade for even a half hour of freedom. Then an idea struck him. He picked up his brush and started painting with a relaxed attitude. Soon, Ben Rogers came along. Ben was pretending to be a steamboat, making noises and acting out his game. He was eating an apple and looked very happy. Tom kept painting, paying no attention to Ben. Ben stopped and watched. "Hey, Tom, you have to work, huh?" Tom turned around, pretending to just notice Ben. "Oh, it's you, Ben. I didn't see you. I'm going swimming. Don't you wish you could come? But you must love working more." Tom thought for a moment and said, "What do you call work?" "Isn't that work?" Ben pointed at the fence. Tom continued painting. "Maybe it is, maybe it isn't. All I know is, I like it." "You like it? Come on, you don't mean that." Tom kept painting. "Sure I do. A boy doesn't get to whitewash a fence every day." This made Ben curious. He stopped eating his apple and watched Tom paint. Tom made sure to paint carefully, stepping back to admire his work. Ben got more interested and said, "Hey, Tom, let me try." Tom pretended to think about it. "No, Ben. Aunt Polly is very particular about this fence. It's got to be done just right. Not every boy can do it." "Come on, just a little. I'd let you if you were me." "Ben, I'd like to, but Aunt Polly wouldn't like it. She didn't let Jim or Sid do it. If something happened to the fence..." "I'll be careful. Let me try. I'll give you my apple core." Tom hesitated. "No, Ben, I'm afraid." "I'll give you the whole apple." Tom handed over the brush reluctantly, but inside he was happy. While Ben worked hard in the sun, Tom sat in the shade, eating the apple and planning how to trick more boys. Soon, other boys came by. They came to make fun of Tom, but they ended up wanting to whitewash too. By the end of the day, Tom had traded for a kite, a dead rat, a piece of blue glass, and many other treasures. The fence had 3 coats of whitewash, and Tom felt rich and proud. He had discovered that to make someone want something, you just have to make it seem hard to get. Tom felt that life was not so bad after all. Tom came to see Aunt Polly. She was sitting by an open window in a cozy room that was used for many things, like a bedroom, breakfast room, dining room, and library. The warm summer air, the quietness, the smell of flowers, and the bees buzzing made her feel sleepy. She was nodding off while knitting because her only company was the sleeping cat on her lap. Her glasses were on her gray hair to keep them safe. She thought Tom had left long ago, so she was surprised to see him back. "Can I go play now, Aunt?" Tom asked. "What? Already? How much have you done?" she replied. "It's all done, Aunt." "Tom, don't lie to me. I can't stand it," she said. "I'm not lying, Aunt. It is all done." Aunt Polly didn't trust Tom's words. She went outside to check for herself. She would have been happy if even a small part of the fence was whitewashed. But when she saw the entire fence beautifully whitewashed, she was amazed. "Well, I never. You can work when you want to, Tom, but you seldom want to," she said. "Go and play, but be back sometime this week or I'll tan you." She was so impressed that she took him to the closet and gave him a special apple. She also gave him a talk about how good it feels to earn a treat without doing anything wrong. While she talked, Tom sneakily took a donut. Tom ran outside and saw Sid going up the outside stairs to the back rooms on the 2nd floor. Tom picked up some clods of dirt and threw them at Sid. They hit Sid like a storm. Before Aunt Polly could come to the rescue, 6 or 7 clods had hit Sid, and Tom had jumped over the fence and ran away. There was a gate, but Tom usually didn't use it because he was always in a hurry. He felt peaceful now that he had settled the score with Sid for getting him in trouble earlier. Tom ran around the block and into a muddy alley behind his aunt's cow stable. He got far enough away to avoid punishment and headed towards the village square. There, 2 groups of boys were about to have a mock battle. Tom was the general of one group, and his best friend, Joe Harper, was the general of the other. These 2 great leaders didn't fight themselves. They gave orders to their soldiers. Tom's army won the battle. They counted the dead, exchanged prisoners, and planned the next battle. After that, the boys marched away, and Tom went home alone. As Tom passed by Jeff Thatcher's house, he saw a new girl in the garden. She had blue eyes, yellow hair in braids, and wore a white summer dress. Tom instantly forgot about his old crush, Amy Lawrence. He had thought he loved Amy, but now he knew it was just a fleeting fancy. This new girl captured his heart. Tom watched the girl until she noticed him. Then he pretended he didn't see her and started showing off, hoping to impress her. He did silly tricks and gymnastics, but when he looked again, she was going inside. Tom leaned on the fence, hoping she would come back. She paused on the steps, then went inside. But before she disappeared, she tossed a flower over the fence. Tom ran to the flower, pretending to be interested in something down the street. He picked up a straw and tried to balance it on his nose while moving closer to the flower. Finally, he stepped on the flower, picked it up with his toes, and hopped away with it. He put the flower inside his jacket, near his heart. Tom hung around the fence until nightfall, still showing off, but the girl never came back. He hoped she had seen him from a window. He went home, feeling a mix of hope and disappointment. During supper, Tom was so cheerful that Aunt Polly wondered what had gotten into him. She scolded him for throwing clods at Sid, but he didn't mind. He tried to steal sugar, but Aunt Polly rapped his knuckles. "Aunt, you don't whack Sid when he takes sugar," Tom complained. "Sid doesn't torment me like you do. You'd always be into that sugar if I weren't watching you," she replied. Aunt Polly went to the kitchen. Sid tried to take some sugar, but the bowl slipped and broke. Tom was overjoyed. He decided to stay silent and wait for Aunt Polly to ask who did it. When she came back, she was very angry. Tom waited for her to ask, ready to tell on Sid. But Aunt Polly immediately started to scold Tom. Tom shouted, "Hold on! What are you hitting me for? Sid broke it!" Aunt Polly stopped, confused. "Well, you didn't get a lick you didn't deserve. You've probably been up to other mischief." Tom sulked in a corner, feeling sorry for himself. He knew Aunt Polly felt bad, but she didn't apologize. Tom imagined himself dying, and Aunt Polly feeling sorry for being so mean. He got so worked up with these thoughts that he nearly cried. That night, Tom went to the house where the new girl lived. He lay down under her window, holding the flower. He imagined her feeling sorry for him when she saw him there in the morning. But instead, a maid opened the window and threw water on him. Tom jumped up, soaked, and ran away. Back home, Tom undressed and looked at his wet clothes. Sid woke up, but wisely stayed silent. Tom went to bed without saying his prayers, and Sid noted the unusual behavior. The sun rose over the peaceful village, shining warmly. After breakfast, Aunt Polly led the family in a prayer filled with quotes from the Bible. Then she read a stern chapter from the Mosaic Law. Afterward, Tom had to memorize 5 Bible verses. Sid had learned his days ago, but Tom struggled. He chose part of the Sermon on the Mount because the verses were short. After half an hour, he still didn't know them well. His sister Mary helped him practice. "Blessed are the, Tom began. "Poor," Mary prompted. "Yes, poor. Blessed are the poor, in spirit. In spirit. Blessed are the poor in spirit, for they, theirs. For theirs. Blessed are the poor in spirit, for theirs is the kingdom of heaven. Blessed are they that mourn, for they, shall. Oh, shall, for they shall, Mary, why don't you tell me?" "Oh, Tom, I'm not teasing you. Try again, and if you do it, I'll give you something nice," Mary encouraged him. "What is it?" Tom asked. "You'll see. Just try." Under the promise of a reward, Tom tried hard and finally learned his verses. Mary gave him a new Barlow knife worth 12.5 cents. Though the knife didn't cut well, Tom was thrilled. He then tried to carve the cupboard with it before being called to dress for Sunday school. Mary gave Tom a basin of water and soap. He went outside, but instead of washing, he poured the water on the ground and wiped his face on a towel. Mary caught him and made him wash properly. When he was done, she helped him dress in his Sunday clothes. She brushed his hair and made sure he was neat, though Tom disliked looking tidy. Tom hoped Mary would forget about his shoes, but she polished them and made him wear them. He grumbled, but Mary persuaded him. Soon, Tom, Sid, and Mary set out for Sunday school. Tom hated it, but Sid and Mary liked it. Sunday school started at 9 and lasted until 10:30, followed by church. Tom often stayed for church because he had to. The church was small, with hard, uncushioned pews. At the door, Tom asked a friend, Billy, if he had a yellow ticket. "Yes," Billy replied. "What'll you take for it?" Tom asked. "Piece of licorice and a fishhook." Tom showed him the items, and they traded. Tom then traded other things for more tickets. He finally had enough to exchange for a Bible. Inside, Tom sat with noisy boys, causing trouble. The teacher scolded him. When it was time to recite their lessons, none of the boys knew their verses well, but they received small blue tickets for their effort. 10 blue tickets equaled a red one, and 10 red ones equaled a yellow ticket. 10 yellow tickets earned a Bible. Only a few students had ever earned a Bible because it required memorizing 2,000 verses. Mary had earned 2 Bibles this way. During the superintendent's speech, visitors arrived. Lawyer Thatcher, a frail old man, a middle-aged man, and a dignified lady with a child. Tom's heart leaped when he saw the child. It was the girl from the garden. He tried to impress her with silly antics. The superintendent, Mr. Walters, introduced the visitors. The middle-aged man was Judge Thatcher, a significant figure in the village. Walters wished he could give out a Bible today to impress the judge. To his shock, Tom presented his tickets and asked for a Bible. Tom was called up to receive the Bible, and the school was amazed. The boys envied him, especially those who had traded tickets with him. Amy Lawrence, Tom's old crush, felt hurt and jealous, realizing Tom's attention was on the new girl. Tom was introduced to Judge Thatcher. Nervously, he stammered his name. The judge praised Tom for memorizing 2,000 verses and asked him to name the first 2 disciples. Tom hesitated, then blurted out, "David and Goliath." The room fell silent. The superintendent, visitors, and students were all taken aback. The judge, trying to be kind, patted Tom on the head. Mr. Walters quickly moved on, and the rest of the Sunday school session continued without further incident. At around 10:30, the cracked bell of the small church began to ring. People started to gather for the morning sermon. The Sunday school children sat with their parents to be supervised. Aunt Polly came, and Tom, Sid, and Mary sat with her. Tom was placed next to the aisle, far from the window to avoid distractions. People walked down the aisles. The old and poor postmaster, the mayor and his wife, the justice of the peace, and the widow Douglas. She was kind, smart, and wealthy, living in the town's only mansion. Then came Major and Mrs. Ward, Lawyer Riverson, and the village belle with a group of young admirers. All the young clerks in town came together, sucking on their cane heads, and finally, Willie Mufferson, the model boy. He carefully took care of his mother and was loved by all the mothers but hated by the boys. When everyone was seated, the bell rang again to signal those still outside. A hush fell over the church, broken only by the choir whispering and giggling. The minister read out the hymn in a peculiar style that was admired. His voice rose and fell dramatically. Shall I be carried to the skies, on flowery beds of ease, whilst others fight to win the prize, and sail through bloody seas? After the hymn, the minister read long notices about meetings and societies. Then he prayed for everyone, the church, children, other churches, the village, the state, the United States, the government, sailors, oppressed people, and even the heathens in far-off lands. He asked that his words might find grace and favor. Everyone sat down after the prayer. Tom, the boy this story is about, did not enjoy the prayer. He counted the details of the prayer out of boredom. A fly landed near him, distracting him with its movements. He wanted to catch it, but didn't dare during the prayer. As soon as Amen was said, he caught the fly, but his aunt made him let it go. The minister started his sermon, which was very dull. Tom counted the pages of the sermon, a habit he had. This time, he was a little interested when the minister talked about the end times when lions and lambs would lie together and a child would lead them. Tom wished he could be that child if the lion was tame. Bored again, Tom took out a black beetle, which he called a pinch bug. It bit his finger, and he flicked it into the aisle. The beetle lay there, and others, bored with the sermon, watched it. A poodle dog noticed the beetle, sniffed it, and played with it. The dog accidentally sat on the beetle, yelped in pain, and ran wildly around the church, causing suppressed laughter. The sermon was interrupted, and the minister had a hard time continuing. The congregation was relieved when the service ended. Tom went home cheerful, thinking church was not so bad when something exciting happened. He only wished the dog hadn't taken his beetle. Monday morning came, and Tom Sawyer was miserable. He hated Mondays because they meant going back to school for another week. He always wished there had been no holiday because returning to school felt worse. Tom lay in bed, thinking. He wished he was sick so he could stay home. He checked himself for any signs of illness, but found none. He tried to think of something else. Finally, he noticed one of his front teeth was loose. This was lucky. He was about to groan to get attention, but he realized his aunt would pull the tooth out, and that would hurt. So he kept quiet and thought some more. Tom remembered a story about a person who was sick for weeks and almost lost a finger. He looked at his sore toe and started to groan, hoping Sid would wake up. Sid kept sleeping. Tom groaned louder and even started to feel a bit of pain in his toe. Sid still didn't wake up. Tom was getting tired. He took a break and then started to groan again, even louder. Finally, Sid woke up. He sat up and looked at Tom. "Tom, what's wrong, Tom?" Sid asked, shaking him. "Oh, don't shake me, Sid," Tom moaned. "It hurts." "What's wrong, Tom? I need to call Aunt Polly." "No, don't. It might get better soon. Don't call anyone." "But I have to. You sound awful. How long have you been like this?" "Hours." "Oh, don't move so much, Sid. You'll kill me." "Tom, why didn't you wake me sooner? What's wrong with you?" "I forgive you for everything, Sid. Everything you've ever done to me. When I'm gone—" "Oh, Tom, you're not dying, are you? Don't say that." "I forgive everyone, Sid. Tell them that. And Sid, give my window sash and my one-eyed cat to the new girl in town and tell her—" But Sid had already run out of the room, thinking Tom was really dying. Sid ran downstairs shouting, "Oh, Aunt Polly, come quick! Tom's dying." "Dying?" "Yes. Don't wait. Come quick." "Nonsense. I don't believe it." But Aunt Polly ran upstairs with Sid and Mary following. Her face turned white when she reached Tom's bedside. "Tom, what's wrong with you?" "Oh, Auntie, my sore toe's mortified." Aunt Polly sat down, laughed a little, then cried a little, then did both. This made her feel better, and she said, "Tom, you scared me. Now stop that nonsense and get out of bed." Tom's groans stopped, and the pain in his toe vanished. He felt a bit foolish. Aunt Polly, it seemed mortified, and it hurt so much I didn't even think about my tooth. Your tooth? What's wrong with your tooth? One of them is loose, and it aches terribly. Don't start groaning again. Open your mouth. Well, your tooth is loose, but you're not going to die from it. Mary, get me a silk thread and a piece of fire from the kitchen. Tom begged. Oh, please, Auntie, don't pull it out. It doesn't hurt anymore. I don't want to stay home from school. Oh, you don't? So you thought you'd stay home and go fishing? Tom, I love you, but you try so hard to break my heart with your antics. She tied one end of the thread to Tom's tooth and the other to the bedpost. Then she took the fire and moved it close to Tom's face. The tooth came out and hung from the bedpost. Despite the trouble, Tom felt happy on his way to school because the gap in his teeth allowed him to spit impressively, making him the envy of the other boys. Tom met Huckleberry Finn, the town's outcast. Huck was disliked by all the mothers but admired by the boys for his freedom. Tom wasn't supposed to play with Huck, but he did whenever he could. "Hello, Huckleberry," Tom called. "Hello yourself," Huck replied. "What's that you got?" "A dead cat." "Can I see it? Where'd you get it?" "Bought it from a boy." "What did you give?" "A blue ticket and a bladder I got from the slaughterhouse." "What's a dead cat good for, Huck?" "Curing warts." "No, really? I know something better." "I bet you don't. What is it?" "Spunk water." "I don't care for spunk water." "Have you tried it?" "No, but Bob Tanner did." "He didn't do it right. You have to do it at midnight and say special words." Tom explained the process, and Huck listened carefully. Soon, they talked about their other wart cures and agreed to try Huck's method with the dead cat at the graveyard that night. As Tom reached the school, he felt important. He hung his hat and sat down, ready for the day. But when the teacher asked why he was late, Tom saw Becky Thatcher, the new girl, and admitted he was talking to Huck Finn. The teacher was shocked and made Tom sit with the girls as punishment. Despite the embarrassment, Tom felt happy because he got to sit next to Becky. They shared a peach, and Tom started drawing on his slate. Becky was curious and asked to see. Tom drew a picture of a house and a man, which Becky liked. She asked Tom to teach her to draw, and he agreed. Tom wrote, "I love you," on his slate, and Becky saw it. She pretended to be angry, but was pleased. Just then, the teacher pulled Tom by the ear and put him back in his seat. But Tom didn't care. He was too happy thinking about Becky. The rest of the school day was tough for Tom. He couldn't concentrate and messed up in all his classes. But his heart was light, thinking about his new friend, Becky Thatcher. Tom tried hard to focus on his book, but his mind kept wandering. He sighed and yawned, giving up. It felt like the noon recess would never come. The day was very hot and sleepy. The murmuring of the students sounded like bees, and the warm air made Tom feel even sleepier. Outside, he could see Cardiff Hill shimmering in the heat. A few birds flew lazily in the sky, and some cows were asleep. Tom wished he could be free, or at least have something fun to do. Tom reached into his pocket and smiled. He pulled out the box with his tick. He let the tick out on his desk and started to play with it using a pin. His friend Joe Harper sat next to him and was also bored. Joe saw the tick and immediately became interested. He took out a pin and started to play with the tick too. The boys quickly realized they were interfering with each other. Tom drew a line down the middle of Joe's slate. "Now," Tom said, "as long as the tick is on your side, you can play with it, and I'll leave it alone. But if it comes to my side, you have to leave it alone." "All right," Joe agreed. "Start him up." The tick moved around, crossing from Tom's side to Joe's and back again. Both boys were completely absorbed in the game, their heads close together over the slate. Joe managed to keep the tick on his side for a long time, which frustrated Tom. Finally, Tom couldn't resist and used his pin to help guide the tick. Joe got angry. "Tom, leave him alone," Joe said. "I just want to stir him up a little," Tom replied. "No, it's not fair. Leave him alone." "I won't." "You shall. He's on my side." "Whose tick is it?" Tom argued. "I don't care. He's on my side, and you can't touch him." "Well, I will. He's my tick, and I'll do what I please with him." Just then, a heavy hand came down on both boys' shoulders. The teacher had silently walked up behind them and caught them playing. He had watched enough to get angry, and now decided to stop it. The teacher whacked both boys and sent them back to their desks, much to the amusement of the other students. When school ended at noon, Tom whispered to Becky Thatcher, "Put on your bonnet and act like you're going home. When you get to the corner, slip away and come back through the lane. I'll do the same." They each joined different groups of children and sneaked back to the schoolyard. Soon, they had the school to themselves. Tom and Becky sat together with a slate. Tom guided Becky's hand, drawing a house. When they got bored of drawing, they started talking. "Do you love rats?" Tom asked. "No, I hate them," Becky replied. "I do too, live ones, but dead ones are fun to swing around." "I don't like them at all. I like chewing gum." "Oh, I wish I had some now." "I have some," Becky said. "I'll let you chew it, but you have to give it back." They shared the gum, taking turns chewing it happily. "Have you ever been to a circus?" Tom asked. "Yes, and my father will take me again if I'm good. I've been lots of times. A circus is so much better than church. I want to be a clown when I grow up." "Really? That would be nice. They look so funny. And they make lots of money. Say, Becky, have you ever been engaged?" "What's that?" "It means you promised to marry someone." "No." "Would you like to?" "I guess so. What is it like?" "You just tell a boy you won't ever love anyone but him, and then you kiss." "Kiss? Why?" "That's just what people do." "Does everyone do it?" "Yes, everyone who loves each other. Do you remember what I wrote on the slate?" "Yes." "What was it?" "I won't tell you." "Shall I tell you?" "Yes, but not now." "No, now." "No, tomorrow." "Oh, please, Becky. I'll whisper it." Becky hesitated, but then nodded. Tom put his arm around her and whispered, "I love you." "Now you say it to me," Tom asked. Becky was shy. "Turn your face away so you can't see me." Tom turned his face, and Becky whispered, "I love you." Tom chased her around the desks until she hid in a corner. He hugged her and said, "Now it's all done, except the kiss. Don't be afraid. It's nothing." Becky finally let him kiss her. "Now, we won't ever love anyone else, right?" "Right," Becky agreed. They were very happy until Tom mentioned Amy Lawrence. Becky got upset and started crying. "Oh, Tom! So I'm not the first you've been engaged to." Tom tried to comfort her, but she pushed him away. Tom's pride got hurt, and he left the school. He hoped Becky would come after him, but she didn't. Becky regretted her reaction and called for Tom, but he didn't come back. She sat alone, feeling sad. The other students returned, and Becky had to hide her feelings and face the rest of the day with a heavy heart. Tom dodged through lanes until he was far from the other children returning home. He walked slowly, feeling gloomy. He crossed a small stream a few times because he believed crossing water would confuse anyone following him. Half an hour later, he was behind the Douglas mansion on Cardiff Hill, far from the school. He entered a thick forest and sat under a big oak tree. It was very hot and quiet. Even the birds were silent, and only a woodpecker's distant tapping broke the stillness. Tom felt sad and alone, thinking about his troubles. He even envied Jimmy Hodges, who had recently died. He thought it must be peaceful to sleep forever without any worries. As he sat there, Tom's thoughts began to change. He wondered what would happen if he disappeared forever. How would Becky feel if he went far away and never returned? He imagined different futures for himself. Being a clown didn't seem appealing anymore. Instead, he thought about becoming a soldier or an Indian chief. Then, a better idea struck him. He would become a pirate. He saw himself sailing the seas in a black ship, becoming famous and feared. One day, he would return to the village as a grand pirate, making everyone admire and envy him. Tom decided he would run away and become a pirate. He needed to prepare. He went to a rotten log and started digging with his knife. He found a hollow space under the log and said an incantation, hoping to find a treasure. He found only a marble. This confused him because he believed that if he buried a marble with magic words, all his lost marbles would gather there. He concluded a witch must have broken the charm. Determined to prove the witch theory, Tom searched for a doodlebug. He found a small sandy spot with a funnel-shaped hole and called, "Doodlebug, doodlebug, tell me what I want to know." A small black bug appeared and quickly disappeared, which Tom took as proof that a witch was involved. Giving up on the treasure, Tom decided to find the marble he had thrown away earlier. He threw another marble to see where it landed, and finally found both marbles. Just then, he heard a faint trumpet sound. Tom quickly grabbed his makeshift bow, arrow, sword, and trumpet, and ran off. He met Joe Harper, who was also dressed up and carrying pretend weapons. Tom called out, "Who comes into Sherwood Forest without my pass?" Joe replied, "I am Guy of Guysborne, and I need no pass. Who are you to ask?" Tom responded, "I am Robin Hood, the famous outlaw." They began a mock fight with their lath swords. They pretended to fight fiercely, following the stories they knew by heart. Eventually, Tom told Joe to fall, because that's what the book said. Joe didn't want to, but he agreed because it was part of the story. Joe then wanted to be Robin Hood and have Tom be the sheriff of Nottingham. They took turns pretending to be different characters, fighting and having adventures. Finally, Tom, as Robin Hood, was wounded and dying. Joe, as the outlaws, took Tom's bow and arrow and helped him shoot an arrow, saying they would bury him where it landed. Tom pretended to die, but jumped up when he landed on a nettle. The boys put away their pretend weapons and left the forest. They felt sad that there were no real outlaws anymore. They wished they could live in Sherwood Forest as outlaws instead of living in the modern world. They thought it would be much more exciting than being the President of the United States. At 9:30 that night, Tom and Sid were sent to bed as usual. They said their prayers, and Sid quickly fell asleep. Tom lay awake, impatient and restless. He waited for what felt like hours, but when the clock struck 10, he was frustrated. He wanted to move around, but was afraid of waking Sid. The room was silent and still. Small, barely noticeable noises began to seem loud. The clock ticking, beams creaking, stairs squeaking, and the faint snoring of Aunt Polly. A cricket chirped, and Tom couldn't locate it. He heard a ticking sound in the wall and shivered, believing it was a death watch beetle, which meant someone's days were numbered. A far-off dog howled, answered by another in the distance. Tom was terrified. Finally, he dozed off, missing the clock striking 11. He was woken by a neighbor yelling at a cat and the crash of a bottle. Wide awake, he dressed, climbed out the window, and crept along the roof. He jumped down to the ground where Huckleberry Finn was waiting with his dead cat. The boys disappeared into the night, heading to the graveyard. The graveyard was old and overgrown, on a hill about 1.5 miles from the village. The fence around it was falling apart, and the grass and weeds were tall. The old graves were sunken in, and the headboards were rotting. It was a spooky place. Tom and Huck felt nervous as they sneaked through the tall grass, speaking in whispers. "Do you think the dead people like us being here?" Tom asked in a whisper. Huck replied, "I wish I knew. It's really scary, isn't it?" "Yeah, I bet it is," Tom agreed. They reached a new grave and hid behind 3 large elm trees nearby. They waited in silence, only hearing the distant hoot of an owl. Tom felt uneasy and whispered, "Huck, do you think Hoss Williams can hear us?" "Of course he can. At least his spirit can," Huck answered. Tom felt a bit guilty for calling him Hoss instead of Mr. Williams. They fell silent again, straining to hear any noise. Suddenly, Tom grabbed Huck's arm. "Shh! Did you hear that?" Tom asked. The boys huddled together, scared. They heard muffled voices and saw a faint light. Huck whispered, "It's the devils, Tom. We're doomed." "No, they're humans. One of them is Muff Potter," Tom whispered back. They saw 3 figures approaching, carrying a lantern and tools. One was Muff Potter, another was Injun Joe, and the third was young Dr. Robinson. The men began digging up the grave. The boys watched silently as they unearthed the coffin and took out the body. The doctor stood by, urging them to hurry. When they finished, Muff Potter demanded more money from the doctor. The doctor refused, saying he had already paid them. Injun Joe angrily reminded the doctor of a past insult and threatened him. The doctor hit Injun Joe, knocking him down. Muff Potter grabbed the doctor, and they struggled. Injun Joe got up, grabbed Potter's knife, and stabbed the doctor in the chest. The doctor fell, dying on top of Potter. The boys were terrified and ran away, not stopping until they were far from the graveyard. Injun Joe stood over the bodies, satisfied, and then placed the knife in Muff Potter's hand to frame him. Potter woke up confused, thinking he had killed the doctor. He begged Injun Joe not to tell anyone, and Joe promised to keep quiet. Potter ran away, and Injun Joe watched him go, muttering about how Potter wouldn't dare come back for the knife. The graveyard was silent again, with only the moon watching over the scene. The boys, scared and breathless, had witnessed everything. Tom and Huck ran toward the village, too scared to speak. They looked back often, afraid someone might be chasing them. Every stump looked like a man, and every sound made them jump. As they passed some cottages near the village, barking dogs made them run even faster. If we can just reach the old tannery before we collapse, Tom whispered between gasps. I can't run much longer. Huck didn't reply, too busy catching his breath. The boys kept their eyes on their goal and pushed themselves harder. Finally, they burst through the tannery door and collapsed inside, exhausted but safe. After a while, their hearts calmed, and Tom whispered, Huck, what do you think will happen? If Dr. Robinson dies, I think they'll hang someone for it. Do you really think so? I know it, Tom. Tom thought for a bit, then asked, Who's going to tell? Us? What are you talking about? If Injun Joe isn't hanged, he'd kill us for sure. That's what I was thinking too, Huck. If anyone tells, it should be Muff Potter. He's usually too drunk to remember much anyway. Tom stayed silent, deep in thought. Then he whispered, Huck, Muff Potter doesn't know. How can he tell? Why wouldn't he know? Because he got hit when Injun Joe did it. He couldn't have seen anything. That's true, Tom. And besides, maybe that hit knocked him out. No, Tom, he had liquor in him. When my pop is full of liquor, you can hit him with anything, and it won't faze him. It's the same with Muff Potter. After a while, Tom said, Huck, can you keep quiet about this? Tom, we have to. Injun Joe would drown us like kittens if we told. We need to swear to each other to keep this secret. I agree. Let's swear. Holding hands wasn't enough for Huck. No, we need something serious. We need to write it down and use blood. Tom loved the idea. It was serious and secretive, fitting the mood. He found a clean piece of wood, took a bit of red chalk from his pocket, and wrote, Huck Finn and Tom Sawyer swear they will keep quiet about this and wish they may drop dead in their tracks if they ever tell and rot. Huck admired Tom's writing skills and the solemnity of the oath. He took a pin to prick his finger, but Tom stopped him. Don't use a pin. It's brass and could have poison on it. What's poison? Just trust me, it's bad. Use a needle instead. They pricked their thumbs with a needle, squeezed out drops of blood, and signed their initials. They buried the wooden shingle near the wall with some solemn words, sealing their oath. Suddenly, a figure moved through a gap in the old building, but they didn't notice. Tom, whispered Huck, does this mean we can never tell, ever? Of course. No matter what happens, we have to keep quiet. We'd drop dead if we told. Yes, I guess that's true. They whispered for a while longer. Suddenly, a dog howled just outside. The boys clung to each other, terrified. Which one of us is it howling for? Huck gasped. I don't know. Look through the crack, quick. No, you do it, Tom. I can't, Huck. Please, Tom. There it is again. Tom, trembling, peeked through the crack. Oh, Huck, it's a stray dog. Who's it looking at? Huck asked. Tom whispered, It's got its back to us. They both felt relieved. The howling stopped. Tom listened. Shh, what's that? Sounds like snoring, Tom. That's it. Where's it coming from, Huck? Down at the other end. Maybe it's someone sleeping there. Tom felt adventurous again. Huck, do you dare go if I lead? I don't like it much. What if it's Injun Joe? Tom hesitated, but the temptation was too strong. They agreed to try, ready to run if the snoring stopped. They tiptoed closer. Tom stepped on a stick, which snapped loudly. The man moved, and his face came into the moonlight. It was Muff Potter. The boys were relieved and tiptoed away. They stopped a little distance away to talk. Suddenly, the dog howled again. The boys turned and saw it facing Muff Potter, with its nose pointing upward. "Oh no, it's him!" they exclaimed together. "Tom, they say a stray dog howled at Johnny Miller's house 2 weeks ago, and someone died there." "That's right. And Gracie Miller got burned badly after that." "Yes, but she's not dead. She's getting better. Just wait and see. She'll die, just like Muff Potter. That's what people say, and they know about these things." They parted ways, thinking about the night's events. When Tom climbed into his bedroom window, it was nearly morning. He undressed quietly, thinking no one knew he'd been out. He didn't realize Sid had been awake, listening. When Tom woke, Sid was already dressed and gone. Tom felt something was wrong. Why hadn't he been woken up as usual? He dressed quickly and went downstairs, feeling tired and sore. The family was still at the table, but they had finished breakfast. No one scolded him, but they all avoided looking at him. The silence and solemnity made Tom feel guilty. He sat down, trying to be cheerful, but no one responded, and he soon fell silent. After breakfast, Aunt Polly took him aside. Tom almost hoped for a whipping, but instead she wept over him. She asked how he could break her heart and told him to go ahead and ruin himself. This was worse than a whipping, and Tom felt miserable. He promised to be good and begged for forgiveness, but he knew he hadn't fully regained her trust. Tom left, too sad to be angry at Sid. He went to school feeling gloomy. He took his punishment for skipping school the day before without complaint. He sat at his desk, resting his head in his hands, staring at the wall. His elbow pressed against something hard. Slowly, he moved and picked up the object with a sigh. It was wrapped in paper. He unwrapped it and found his brass knob. With a heavy heart, he realized this final disappointment was too much. Around noon, the entire village buzzed with shocking news. Even without telegraphs, the story spread quickly from person to person, house to house. The schoolmaster gave everyone the afternoon off. The town would have found it odd if he hadn't. A bloody knife had been found near the murdered man and was recognized as belonging to Muff Potter. People said a man had seen Potter washing himself in the creek around 1 or 2 in the morning, which was suspicious since Potter rarely washed. The town was searched for Potter, but he was nowhere to be found. Horsemen left in every direction, and the sheriff was sure Potter would be captured before nightfall. The entire town headed to the graveyard. Tom's heartbreak vanished as he joined the crowd, driven by a strange fascination. Once at the graveyard, he squeezed through the crowd to see the gruesome scene. It felt like ages since he had been there last. Someone pinched his arm, and he saw Huck. They quickly looked away, hoping no one noticed their reaction. Poor fellow. Poor young fellow. This should be a lesson to grave robbers. Muff Potter will hang for this if they catch him, the crowd muttered. The minister said, "It's a judgment. God's hand is in this." Tom shivered when he saw Injun Joe's stony face. Suddenly the crowd began to stir and shout, "It's him! He's coming!" "Who?" "Muff Potter." People in the trees said Potter wasn't trying to escape, just looking confused. The crowd parted as the sheriff led Potter through, holding him by the arm. Potter's face was haggard, and he looked terrified. When he saw the body, he shook and began to cry. "I didn't do it, friends. I swear I didn't do it." "Who's accusing you?" shouted a voice. Potter looked around helplessly and saw Injun Joe. "Oh, Injun Joe, you promised you'd never—" "Is this your knife?" the sheriff asked, showing the bloody knife. Potter nearly collapsed. Something told me to come back and get... He shuddered and gave up. Tell them, Joe. Tell them. It's no use. Tom and Huck stood silent, listening to Injun Joe's calm lies, expecting lightning to strike him any moment. But nothing happened. They realized Joe had sold his soul to the devil, and they dared not interfere. Why didn't you leave? Why did you come here? Someone asked Potter. I couldn't help it. I wanted to run, but I couldn't go anywhere but here. Potter sobbed. Injun Joe repeated his lies under oath at the inquest, and the boys were convinced Joe had supernatural protection. They resolved to watch him at night, hoping to see his dark master. Injun Joe helped load the body onto a wagon, and some villagers whispered that the wound bled a little, which should point suspicion at Joe. But others noted the wound was near Potter, so suspicion stayed on him. Tom's guilt and worry plagued his sleep for a week. One morning at breakfast, Sid said, "Tom, you talk in your sleep so much you keep me awake." Tom went pale. "What do I say?" "Last night you kept saying, 'It's blood, it's blood,' and 'Don't torment me, I'll tell.'" "Tell what?" Tom felt dizzy and scared. Aunt Polly, noticing his distress, said, "It's that dreadful murder. I dream about it too." Sid seemed satisfied, but Tom quickly left. For a week, he tied a bandage around his jaw, pretending to have a toothache, not knowing Sid was secretly listening to him at night. Gradually, Tom's guilt faded, and he stopped pretending his tooth hurt. Sid noticed Tom avoided inquests on dead cats, which he used to lead. Tom never acted as a witness and tried to avoid them entirely. Sid found this strange but said nothing. During this time, Tom secretly visited the jail, bringing small comforts to Muff Potter. The jail was a small, unguarded brick building at the village's edge. These visits eased Tom's conscience. The villagers wanted to punish Injun Joe for body snatching, but no one dared to lead. Joe had been careful to start his inquest statements with the fight, not mentioning the grave robbery. So, the case was not tried in court, and Joe remained free, a terrifying figure in Tom and Huck's eyes. Tom's mind found a new worry to distract him from his troubles. Becky Thatcher had stopped coming to school. Tom fought his pride for a few days, trying to forget her, but he couldn't. He began to hang around her house at night, feeling miserable. She was ill. What if she died? The thought drove him to despair. He lost interest in war games and piracy. Life seemed dull and joyless. He put away his hoop and bat. His aunt noticed his sadness and began trying various remedies on him. Aunt Polly loved trying out new health cures. She read all the health magazines and believed everything they said, even though the advice often contradicted itself month to month. She was always ready to try new treatments, not on herself, but on anyone else. She gathered her medicines and remedies and went about trying to heal the sick, never suspecting she might be causing more harm than good. The new treatment was water therapy, and Tom's low spirits gave her the perfect patient. She woke him at daylight, drenched him with cold water in the woodshed, scrubbed him down, then wrapped him in wet sheets and blankets to sweat out the sickness. But Tom only grew more pale and sad. She added hot baths, sitz baths, shower baths, and oatmeal diets. Tom remained as gloomy as ever. She then tried blister plasters and filled him with various patent medicines. Tom endured it all without complaint, which worried Aunt Polly even more. She heard about a new medicine called painkiller and decided to try it. She gave Tom a teaspoonful and watched anxiously. Tom reacted wildly to the fiery liquid, showing intense interest for the first time. Aunt Polly was relieved. She thought she had found the cure. Tom decided to pretend to like painkiller to avoid other treatments. He asked for it so often that Aunt Polly finally told him to help himself. She watched the bottle secretly to make sure he was taking it. Tom, meanwhile, was pouring it into a crack in the sitting room floor. One day, as Tom was dosing the floor, Aunt Polly's yellow cat, Peter, came by, begging for a taste. Tom warned him, but Peter insisted. Tom gave him some painkiller. Peter sprang into the air, yowled, and ran around the room, knocking over furniture and flower pots. Aunt Polly entered just in time to see Peter leap out the window. Tom lay on the floor, laughing. "Tom, what's wrong with that cat?" Aunt Polly asked. "I don't know, Aunt Polly," Tom said, trying to stop laughing. "What made him act like that?" "Cats always act like that when they're having a good time." "They do they?" Aunt Polly said, suspicious. She noticed the spoon under the bed and picked it up. Tom winced. "Tom, why did you treat that poor cat like that?" "I felt sorry for him because he didn't have an aunt," Tom said. "What does that have to do with it?" "If he had an aunt, she'd have burned him out herself." Aunt Polly felt a pang of guilt. Maybe she had been too harsh on Tom. She softened and said, "I was trying to help, Tom, and it did do you good." Tom looked up at her with a twinkle in his eye. "I know you were, Aunt Polly, and I was helping Peter too. It did him good." "Oh, go along with you, Tom. Try to be a good boy, and you don't need to take any more medicine." Tom went to school early. He had been doing this every day recently. He hung around the gate, looking down the road, feeling sick. When Jeff Thatcher arrived, Tom tried to bring up Becky in conversation, but Jeff didn't take the bait. Tom watched every frock that came into sight, hoping it was Becky. Finally, he gave up and sat in the empty schoolhouse, feeling miserable. Then he saw a frock at the gate, and his heart leaped. It was Becky. Tom sprang into action, showing off by yelling, laughing, chasing boys, jumping over fences, doing handstands, and all sorts of stunts. He kept an eye on Becky, hoping she'd notice, but she seemed unaware. He moved closer to her, causing a scene. He snatched a boy's cap, threw it on the schoolhouse roof, tumbled through a group of boys, and nearly fell at Becky's feet. She turned away with her nose in the air, saying, "Some people think they're so smart, always showing off." Tom's cheeks burned with embarrassment. He gathered himself up and sneaked away, feeling crushed and defeated. Tom Sawyer had made up his mind. He was feeling very sad and desperate. He thought no one cared about him, and he was sure everyone would be sorry when they found out what he planned to do. He tried to be good, but nothing worked. So, if everyone wanted him gone, he would leave. He decided to live a life of crime. There was no other choice. By now, he was far down Meadow Lane. The school bell rang in the distance, making him feel even sadder. He thought about how he would never hear that bell again. He cried a lot as he walked. At that moment, he met Joe Harper, his best friend. Joe looked as sad as Tom felt. They both had the same idea. Tom told Joe that he was going to run away because nobody at home loved him. He hoped Joe wouldn't forget him. Joe was happy to see Tom because he had the same plan. Joe's mother had whipped him for something he didn't do, and he felt unloved. He decided to leave home too. The boys walked together, feeling sad but determined. They promised to stay together no matter what. Joe wanted to be a hermit and live alone in a cave, but Tom convinced him that being a pirate would be more fun. They decided to make Jackson's Island their hideout. The island was 3 miles down the Mississippi River and was covered in trees. No one lived there, making it the perfect place for pirates. They found Huckleberry Finn and told him their plan. Huck, who was always up for an adventure, joined them. They agreed to meet at midnight at a spot 2 miles above the village. They planned to steal a small log raft for their journey. That night, Tom brought a boiled ham and other food. He hid in the bushes near the meeting place. It was quiet and dark. He whistled softly. The whistles were answered, and then a voice said, "Who goes there?" "Tom Sawyer, the Black Avenger of the Spanish Main." "Name your names," Tom replied. "Huck Finn, the Red-Handed, and Joe Harper, the Terror of the Seas," they answered. Tom had made up these pirate names from his favorite books. They gave the secret password, "Blood," and then joined together. Huck brought a skillet and some tobacco. Joe brought bacon. They needed fire, so they sneaked to a nearby raft and stole a burning chunk of wood. They pretended they were in danger, whispering and acting like real pirates. They set off on the raft with Tom in command. The boys pretended to sail a pirate ship, giving orders and imagining they were at sea. The river was calm, and they drifted quietly. They reached Jackson's Island around 2 a.m. and set up camp. They built a fire, cooked bacon, and ate half of the cornbread they had brought. They felt like real pirates, far from home and living in the wild. "Isn't this great?" said Joe. "It's perfect," said Tom. "What would the other boys say if they could see us now?" "They'd be jealous," said Huck. "I'm happy here. I don't usually get enough to eat, and no one can boss me around here." "I love it too," said Tom. "We don't have to get up early, go to school, or wash. Pirates don't have to do anything they don't want to." Joe agreed that being a pirate was better than being a hermit. Pirates were always respected and had exciting lives. The boys talked about their new pirate lives until they grew sleepy. Huck, who had brought tobacco, smoked his pipe and felt very content. The others envied him and decided they would learn to smoke soon too. "What do pirates do?" Huck asked. "They have a great time," said Tom. "They capture ships, take treasure, and make people walk the plank. They also take women to their island, but they don't hurt them because pirates are noble. And they wear fancy clothes," added Joe. Huck looked at his own ragged clothes and felt sad. The others assured him that he would get fine clothes once they started their adventures. They continued talking until they were too tired to stay awake. Huck fell asleep first. Tom and Joe found it harder to sleep because they felt guilty for running away and stealing food. They decided not to steal anymore, even as pirates. After this, they finally fell asleep. The 3 boys slept peacefully, dreaming of their new lives as pirates on Jackson's Island. Tom woke up early in the morning and felt confused. He rubbed his eyes and looked around. Then he remembered everything. It was the cool, quiet dawn, and the woods around him were peaceful and still. The leaves and grass were covered in dew. The fire from last night was now just a layer of white ashes, with a thin line of smoke rising into the air. Joe and Huck were still sleeping. Far away, a bird called, and another answered. Soon, the sound of a woodpecker hammering could be heard. As the sky brightened, more sounds of life filled the air. Tom watched the world wake up. A little green worm crawled over a dewy leaf, lifting part of its body up and sniffing around. Tom believed it was measuring something. The worm crawled onto Tom's leg, making him happy because he thought it meant he would get a new suit of clothes, a pirate outfit. A line of ants appeared and went about their work. One ant struggled to carry a dead spider much bigger than itself up a tree. A ladybug climbed a blade of grass, and Tom said to it, "Ladybug, ladybug, fly away home. Your house is on fire, your children's alone." The ladybug flew away, and Tom wasn't surprised. He had tricked ladybugs like this before. Next, a dung beetle rolled its ball past Tom. He touched it, and it pretended to be dead. The birds were very active now. A catbird, the northern mocker, sang joyfully in a tree above Tom. A blue jay swooped down and watched the boys curiously. Squirrels chattered at the boys, having never seen humans before. Tom woke up Joe and Huck, and they all ran to the river. They stripped off their clothes and splashed around in the shallow water, feeling no desire to return to the village they left behind. The river had carried off their raft, but they were glad it was gone. It meant there was no going back. They returned to camp feeling refreshed and hungry. Huck found a spring of clear, cold water, and they made cups from leaves to drink from. Joe started slicing bacon for breakfast, but Tom and Huck decided to fish first. They quickly caught some fish and brought them back. They fried the fish with the bacon and were amazed at how delicious it was. After breakfast, they lay around in the shade while Huck smoked. Then they explored the island. They walked over logs, through bushes, and among tall trees covered in grapevines. They found grassy spots with flowers. The island was about 3 miles long and 1/4 of a mile wide, with a narrow channel separating it from the shore. They swam often, and by afternoon they returned to camp, too hungry to fish. They ate cold ham and rested in the shade. But soon they felt bored and homesick. Even Huck missed his usual places in the village. They all felt a longing for home, but were too ashamed to admit it. They heard a distant sound they couldn't identify at first. Then they realized it was a deep, sullen boom. "What is it?" whispered Joe. They listened, and the sound came again. Tom exclaimed, "I know now! Somebody's drowned!" They rushed to the shore and saw a ferry boat drifting with the current, crowded with people. Skiffs were nearby, and a jet of white smoke burst from the ferry boat, followed by the same booming sound. "They're shooting a cannon over the water to bring up the body," said Huck. Tom agreed, explaining that they also used loaves of bread with quicksilver to find drowned bodies. The boys wished they were over there to see who it was. Suddenly, Tom had a thought. "Boys, I know who's drowned. It's us." They felt like heroes. They were missed, mourned, and the talk of the town. It was a thrilling feeling. As night fell, the ferry boat returned to its usual route, and the skiffs disappeared. The boys, feeling proud of their new status, went back to camp. They caught fish, cooked dinner, and imagined how the village was reacting to their disappearance. But as night deepened, they grew quiet and thoughtful. They missed home. Joe timidly suggested going back, but Tom mocked him, and Huck agreed with Tom. Joe quickly changed his mind, not wanting to seem weak. Huck and Joe soon fell asleep, but Tom stayed awake, watching them. He picked up some pieces of sycamore bark and wrote something on each with his red keel. He placed one in his pocket and the other in Joe's hat, along with some treasures. Then he sneaked away, running towards the sandbar. A few minutes later, Tom was in the shallow water of the sandbar, wading toward the Illinois shore. Before the water reached his middle, he was halfway across. The current became too strong for wading, so he started swimming confidently. He swam upstream at an angle but was still swept downstream faster than he expected. However, he finally reached the shore and drifted along until he found a low spot to climb out. He checked his jacket pocket to make sure his piece of bark was safe, then moved through the woods, following the shore with his wet clothes clinging to him. Just before 10 o'clock, Tom emerged from the woods opposite the village and saw the ferry boat lying in the shadow of the trees and high bank. Everything was quiet under the blinking stars. He crept down the bank, watching carefully, slipped into the water, swam a few strokes, and climbed into the small skiff tied to the boat. He lay down under the thwarts and waited, panting. Soon the cracked bell tapped and a voice gave the order to cast off. A minute later, the skiff's head was rising and falling against the boat's swell, and the voyage began. Tom felt happy with his success, knowing it was the boat's last trip for the night. After a long 12 or 15 minutes, the wheels stopped, and Tom slipped overboard. He swam ashore, landing 50 yards downstream to avoid any possible onlookers. He hurried along empty alleys and soon found himself at his aunt's back fence. He climbed over, approached the house, and looked in through the sitting room window. There sat Aunt Polly, Sid, Mary, and Joe Harper's mother, all talking by the bed. Tom went to the door and quietly lifted the latch. He pushed the door open gently, cringing every time it creaked, until he could squeeze through on his knees. He put his head through and began to crawl. "What makes the candle blow so?" Aunt Polly said. Tom hurried. "Why, that door's open. Sid, go and shut it." Tom disappeared under the bed just in time. He lay still, trying to control his breathing, then crept to where he could almost touch his aunt's foot. "But as I was saying," Aunt Polly said, "he wasn't bad, just mischievous, just giddy and harum-scarum, you know. He never meant any harm, and he was the best-hearted boy that ever was." She began to cry. "It was just the same with my Joe," Mrs. Harper said. "Always full of mischief, but unselfish and kind. And to think I whipped him for taking that cream, never remembering I threw it out myself because it was sour. I'll never see him again in this world, poor abused boy." She sobbed as if her heart would break. "I hope Tom's better off where he is," Sid said. "But if he'd been better in some ways—" "Sid!" Tom felt the glare of Aunt Polly's eye, even though he couldn't see it. "Not a word against my Tom now that he's gone. God'll take care of him. Don't you worry. Oh, Mrs. Harper, I don't know how to give him up. He was such a comfort, even though he tormented me so. The Lord giveth and the Lord taketh away. Blessed be the name of the Lord. But it's so hard. Only last Saturday my Joe set off a firecracker under my nose, and I knocked him over. If I could do it again, I'd hug him and bless him for it. Yes, I know just how you feel, Mrs. Harper. No longer ago than yesterday, my Tom filled the cat with painkiller, and I thought it would tear the house down, and I cracked his head with my thimble. Poor boy, poor dead boy, but he's out of his troubles now. The last words I heard him say were a reproach." Aunt Polly broke down completely. Tom was sniffling now, more out of pity for himself than anyone else. He could hear Mary crying and speaking kindly of him. He started to have a higher opinion of himself than ever before. He was touched by his aunt's grief and longed to rush out and comfort her, imagining the dramatic scene it would create. But he resisted and stayed hidden. He listened and gathered that the boys were thought to have drowned while swimming. The small raft had been missed, and some boys said the missing lads had promised the village would hear something soon. Wise people guessed the boys had gone off on the raft and would turn up at the next town. But when the raft was found against the Missouri shore 5 or 6 miles downriver, hope perished. The boys must have drowned. This was Wednesday night. If the bodies weren't found by Sunday, all hope would be given up, and funerals would be held. Tom shuddered. Mrs. Harper said good night, and the two women hugged each other and cried. Aunt Polly was unusually tender in her good night to Sid and Mary. Sid sniffled, and Mary went off crying. Aunt Polly knelt and prayed for Tom so touchingly that he was crying again long before she finished. He waited until she went to bed and lay still for a long time. When she finally quieted, Tom sneaked out from under the bed, stood by her bedside, and looked at her with a heart full of pity. He took out his sycamore scroll and placed it by the candle, then changed his mind, put it in his pocket, bent over, kissed her, and left quietly. He made his way back to the ferry landing, found it empty, and boarded the boat. He untied the skiff at the stern, rowed upstream, and crossed to the island. He rested until the sun was up, and then swam back to the camp. When he arrived, he heard Joe say, "No, Tom's true blue, Huck. He'll come back. He won't desert. He knows it would be a disgrace to a pirate, and Tom's too proud for that. He's up to something." "Well, the things are ours, aren't they?" Huck asked. "Pretty near, but not yet, Huck. The writing says they are if he isn't back for breakfast." "Which he is!" Tom exclaimed, stepping grandly into camp. A delicious breakfast of bacon and fish was quickly prepared, and as they ate, Tom recounted his adventures, embellishing them as usual. They felt proud and boastful. Then Tom hid in a shady spot to sleep till noon, and the other pirates prepared to fish and explore. After dinner, all the gang went hunting for turtle eggs on the sandbar. They used sticks to poke into the sand and find soft spots. When they found one, they dug with their hands. Sometimes they would take 50 or 60 eggs out of one hole. The eggs were perfectly round white things, a bit smaller than an English walnut. They had a delicious fried egg feast that night and another on Friday morning. After breakfast, they went out on the sandbar, running around and shedding clothes until they were naked. Then they continued their frolic in the shallow water of the bar, playing against the stiff current, which tripped their legs and made the fun even greater. They splashed water in each other's faces, struggling until someone ducked their neighbor, and then they all went under in a tangle of white legs and arms, coming up laughing and gasping for breath. When they were exhausted, they sprawled on the hot sand, covering themselves with it, and then went back to the water to repeat the performance. Finally, they realized their naked skin looked like flesh-colored tights. So they drew a ring in the sand and had a circus, with 3 clowns, as none would give up this proud position. Next, they played marbles, knucks, ring-taw, and keeps until they got bored. Joe and Huck went for another swim, but Tom stayed out because he had lost his string of rattlesnake rattles, which he believed protected him from cramps. He found it eventually, but by then, the other boys were tired and ready to rest. They wandered apart, feeling homesick and staring longingly at the village across the river. Tom found himself writing Becky in the sand with his toe. He erased it, angry at his weakness, but then wrote it again. He finally distracted himself by joining the other boys. Joe was the most homesick, and he could barely stand it. Huck was also sad, and Tom was downhearted, but tried not to show it. He had a secret he wasn't ready to reveal yet. Trying to cheer them up, he said, "I bet there's pirate treasure on this island. We should explore and find it." But this didn't lift their spirits. Joe was gloomy and said, "Oh, boys, let's give it up. I want to go home. It's so lonely." "Oh, no, Joe, you'll feel better soon," Tom said. "Think of all the fishing." "I don't care for fishing. I want to go home." "But, Joe, this is the best swimming place." "Swimming's no fun if no one tells me I can't. I mean to go home." "Baby, you miss your mother." "Yes, I do, and you would too if you had one. I'm not a baby." Joe sniffled. "Well, we'll let the crybaby go home, won't we, Huck? You like it here, don't you, Huck? We'll stay." Huck said, "Yes," without any enthusiasm. "I'll never speak to you again, Joe," Tom said. Joe began dressing. "Who cares?" Tom continued. "Nobody wants you to stay. Go home and get laughed at. You're a nice pirate. Huck and I will stay. We're not crybabies." But Tom was worried. Joe was determined to leave, and Huck was watching Joe with longing. Huck said, "I want to go too, Tom. It's getting lonely. Let's go home." "I won't. You all can go if you want. I'm staying." "Tom, I better go." "Go then. Who's stopping you?" Huck started packing. "Tom, I wish you'd come too. We'll wait for you." "You'll wait a long time." Huck started to leave, and Tom felt a strong urge to join them but held back. He hoped they'd stop, but they didn't. Finally, he shouted, "Wait, I want to tell you something." They stopped, and Tom unfolded his secret plan. When they understood, they cheered and said it was splendid. They went back to their games, chatting about Tom's plan. After a dinner of eggs and fish, Tom said he wanted to learn to smoke. Joe wanted to try too. Huck made pipes and filled them. They began to puff, gagging a little but determined. Tom said, "If I'd known it was this easy, I'd have learned long ago." "Me too," Joe said. The little town was very quiet that Saturday afternoon. The Harpers and Aunt Polly's family were mourning deeply. The village was usually quiet, but now it was unusually silent. People went about their business with a distant look, speaking little but sighing often. The Saturday holiday felt heavy to the children, who soon abandoned their usual games. In the afternoon, Becky Thatcher wandered sadly around the empty schoolyard. She felt very lonely. She thought to herself, "Oh, if only I had the brass andiron knob again, but I have nothing to remember him by." She choked back a little sob. She stopped and said to herself, "It was right here. Oh, if I could do it over, I wouldn't say that. I wouldn't say it for the whole world. But he's gone now. I'll never see him again." This thought broke her down, and she walked away with tears streaming down her face. A group of Tom and Joe's friends came by and stood looking over the fence, talking in low voices about the last time they saw Tom and Joe. Each one pointed out the exact spot where they stood and recalled something they said, which now seemed like an eerie prophecy. One boy said with pride, "Well, Tom Sawyer licked me once." But this didn't impress the others much, as many had been in the same situation. The group eventually drifted away, still sharing memories of Tom and Joe in hushed voices. The next morning, the church bell began to toll instead of ringing as usual. It was a very still Sunday, and the sad sound seemed fitting. The villagers gathered at the church, talking in whispers about the tragic event. Inside, there was no whispering, only the rustling of dresses as the women took their seats. The church had never been so full. Aunt Polly, Sid, Mary, and the Harpers entered in deep black, and the whole congregation stood until they were seated. Silence fell, broken only by muffled sobs, and then the minister began to pray. A moving hymn was sung, followed by the text, "I am the resurrection and the life." The minister spoke of the lost boy's good qualities, making everyone feel guilty for only seeing their faults before. He shared touching stories about their lives that now seemed noble, though at the time they were seen as mischievous. The congregation grew more emotional, and soon everyone was weeping along with the minister. Suddenly, there was a noise in the gallery, but no one noticed. The church door creaked open, and the minister stood frozen. Eyes followed his gaze, and soon the whole congregation was staring at the three dead boys, Tom, Joe, and Huck, walking up the aisle. They had been hiding in the gallery, listening to their own funeral. Aunt Polly, Mary, and the Harpers rushed to their boys, covering them with kisses and thanksgivings, while Huck stood awkwardly, unsure of what to do. He tried to slip away, but Tom grabbed him, saying, "Aunt Polly, it's not fair. Someone should be glad to see Huck." Aunt Polly hugged Huck, saying, "I'm glad to see him, poor motherless thing." This attention made Huck even more uncomfortable. Suddenly the minister shouted, "Praise God from whom all blessings flow. Sing and put your hearts in it." The congregation sang Old Hundred with such joy that it shook the rafters. Tom, feeling like a hero, looked around at the other kids and thought this was the proudest moment of his life. As the people left the church, they said they would almost be willing to be tricked again to hear Old Hundred sung like that once more. Tom received more hugs and scoldings from Aunt Polly that day than he had in a year. He hardly knew which showed more love and gratitude. Tom's big secret was out. He had planned to return home with his fellow pirates to attend their own funerals. They had paddled to the Missouri shore on a log on Saturday evening, landed miles below the village, and slept in the woods until dawn. Then they snuck through back lanes and slept in the church gallery, hidden among the benches. On Monday morning at breakfast, Aunt Polly and Mary were very loving and attentive to Tom. Aunt Polly said, "Well, it was a fine joke, Tom, making everyone worry all week just so you boys could have fun. But it's a shame you let me suffer so. If you could come to your funeral, you could have given me a hint that you weren't dead." "Yes, you could have done that, Tom," said Mary. "And I believe you would have if you'd thought of it." "Would you, Tom?" Aunt Polly asked, her face lighting up hopefully. "Would you have told me if you'd thought of it?" Tom hesitated. "Well, I don't know. It would have spoiled everything." "Tom, I hoped you loved me enough to think of it," Aunt Polly said sadly, making Tom uncomfortable. "It would have meant something if you'd cared enough to think about it, even if you didn't do it." Mary tried to comfort her, saying, "It's just Tom's way. He's always in such a rush that he doesn't think of things." "More's the pity. Sid would have thought of it and done it too," Aunt Polly said. "Tom, one day you'll look back and wish you had cared more for me when it would have cost you so little." "Auntie, you know I do care for you," Tom said. "I'd know it better if you acted more like it." Tom, feeling remorseful, said, "I wish I'd thought of it. But I did dream about you. Isn't that something? It's not much, but it's better than nothing. What did you dream? Wednesday night, I dreamt that you were sitting by the bed, and Sid was by the woodbox, and Mary next to him. We were. That's how we always are. I'm glad your dreams could remember us. And I dreamt that Joe Harper's mother was here. She was. Did you dream anything else? Lots, but it's all dim now. Try to remember. Tom pressed his fingers to his forehead. I've got it. The wind blew the candle. Go on, Tom. It seems like you said, I believe the door. Go on, Tom. You said you believed the door was open. I did say that, didn't I, Mary? Go on. And then you made Sid shut it. That's right. I never heard the beat of that in all my days. Don't tell me there's nothing in dreams anymore. Go on, Tom. It's all coming back now. You said I wasn't bad, just mischievous, and not any more responsible than a colt. And so I did. Go on. And then you began to cry. So I did. Not the first time either. And then Mrs. Harper began to cry too, and said Joe was the same, and she wished she hadn't whipped him for taking the cream when she'd thrown it out herself. Tom, you were prophesying. Go on. Sid said he hoped I was better off where I was, but if I'd been better sometimes? That's his exact words. And you shut him up sharp. I sure did. There was an angel there somewhere. And Mrs. Harper told about Joe scaring her with a firecracker, and you told about Peter and the painkiller. That's right. Then there was talk about dragging the river for us, and having the funeral on Sunday, and then you and Mrs. Harper hugged and cried, and she left. It happened just like that. Go on, Tom. Then I thought you prayed for me. I saw you and heard every word. You went to bed, and I was so sorry that I wrote on a piece of bark, "We ain't dead, we are only off being pirates," and put it on the table by the candle. Then I thought I leaned over and kissed you. Did you, Tom? Did you? Aunt Polly cried, embracing him tightly. I forgive you for everything, Sid murmured just loud enough to hear. It was very kind, even though it was only a dream. Shut up, Sid. Tom would do the same if he was awake. Here's an apple I saved for you, Tom. Now go to school. I'm thankful to God I've got you back. Now go on, all of you. The children left for school, and Aunt Polly went to Mrs. Harper's to share Tom's dream. Sid kept his thoughts to himself, but wondered how Tom's long dream had no mistakes. Tom felt like a hero. He walked with a dignified swagger, aware of the admiring eyes on him. Smaller boys followed him, proud to be seen with him, as if he were leading a parade. Boys his age pretended not to notice him, but were secretly envious of his sun-tanned skin and newfound fame. At school, the children's admiration made Tom and Joe insufferably proud. They began recounting their adventures, but never finished. When they pulled out their pipes and puffed around, they felt they had reached the height of glory. Tom decided he didn't need Becky Thatcher now. He would live for glory. But when Becky arrived, Tom pretended not to see her. Becky tried to get his attention, playing and laughing near him. It only made Tom more determined to ignore her. She tried to join a conversation with a girl near Tom, but he kept talking to Amy Lawrence about his adventures. Becky, hurt and angry, left and cried. At recess, Tom flirted with Amy to make Becky jealous. When he saw Becky with Alfred Temple, jealousy consumed him. He regretted not making up with Becky and wanted to cry with frustration. Amy's chatter became intolerable, and he hinted at things he had to do, hoping she'd leave. Finally, he made an excuse and hurried away, cursing his luck. Becky, seeing no reaction from Tom, grew miserable. She wished she hadn't pushed him away. Alfred, trying to cheer her up, was rebuffed. She told him to leave her alone and walked away, crying. Alfred, humiliated and angry, saw Tom's spelling book and poured ink on the page, hoping to get Tom into trouble. Becky saw Alfred's act and intended to tell Tom, but then remembered how Tom had treated her. She decided to let Tom get in trouble and resolved to hate him forever. Tom came home in a sad mood, and the first thing his aunt said showed him that he had brought his troubles to the wrong place. "Tom, I've a notion to skin you alive." "Auntie, what did I do?" "You know well enough. I went over to Serene Harper's, thinking I could make her believe all that nonsense about your dream. But she found out from Joe that you were here and heard all our talk that night." "Tom, I don't know what to do with a boy who acts like that. It makes me feel so bad to think you let me go make a fool of myself and didn't say a word." This was a new angle on the situation. Tom's cleverness that morning had seemed like a good joke before, but now it felt mean and shabby. He hung his head and couldn't think of anything to say. Then he said, "Auntie, I wish I hadn't done it, but I didn't think." "Oh, child, you never think. You never think of anything but your own selfishness. You could think to come all the way from Jackson's Island at night to laugh at our troubles, and you could think to fool me with a lie about a dream, but you couldn't think to pity us and save us from sorrow. Auntie, I know it was mean, but I didn't mean to be mean. I didn't, honest. And besides, I didn't come over here to laugh at you that night." "What did you come for then?" "To tell you not to worry about us, because we hadn't drowned." "Tom, I'd be the happiest soul in this world if I could believe you ever had a good thought like that. But you know you didn't. And I know it, Tom." "Indeed, and truly I did, Auntie. I wish I may never stir if I didn't." "Oh, Tom, don't lie. Don't do it. It only makes things 100 times worse." "It's not a lie, Auntie. It's the truth. I wanted to keep you from grieving. That's why I came. I'd give the whole world to believe that. It would cover up a lot of sins, Tom. I'd almost be glad you ran off and acted so bad. But it's not reasonable, because why didn't you tell me, child? When you started talking about the funeral, I just got all caught up in the idea of us coming and hiding in the church, and I couldn't spoil it. So I put the bark back in my pocket and kept quiet." "What bark?" "The bark I wrote on to tell you we'd gone pirating. I wish now you'd woken up when I kissed you. I do, honest." The hard lines in his aunt's face relaxed, and a sudden tenderness appeared in her eyes. "Did you kiss me, Tom?" "Yes, I did." "Are you sure you did, Tom?" "Yes, Auntie, certain sure." "What did you kiss me for, Tom?" "Because I loved you so, and you were lying there moaning, and I was so sorry." The words sounded like the truth. The old lady couldn't hide the tremor in her voice when she said, "Kiss me again, Tom, and be off to school now, and don't bother me any more." The moment he was gone, she ran to a closet and got out the ruined jacket Tom had worn while pirating. She stopped, holding it, and said to herself, "No, I don't dare. Poor boy, I reckon he's lied about it, but it's a blessed, blessed lie. There's such comfort in it. I know the Lord will forgive him because it was good-hearted of him to tell it. But I don't want to find out it's a lie. I won't look." She put the jacket away and stood by, musing for a minute. Twice she reached out to take the jacket again, and twice she refrained. Once more she ventured, and this time fortified herself with the thought, "It's a good lie. It's a good lie. I won't let it grieve me." So she sought the jacket pocket. A moment later, she was reading Tom's piece of bark through flowing tears and saying, "I could forgive the boy now if he'd committed 1,000,000 sins." There was something about Aunt Polly's manner when she kissed Tom that lifted his spirits and made him happy again. He started to school and was lucky to meet Becky Thatcher at the head of Meadow Lane. His mood always determined his manner. Without a moment's hesitation, he ran to her and said, "I acted really mean today, Becky, and I'm so sorry. I won't ever do that again. Please make up, won't you?" The girl stopped and looked him scornfully in the face. "I'll thank you to keep to yourself, Mr. Thomas Sawyer. I'll never speak to you again." She tossed her head and walked away. Tom was so stunned that he didn't even have the presence of mind to say, "Who cares, Miss Smarty?" until the right time had passed. So he said nothing. But he was in a fine rage nevertheless. He moped into the schoolyard, wishing she were a boy so he could fight her. As he wandered around, he saw Becky, and delivered a stinging remark as he passed. She hurled one back, and the angry breach was complete. Becky, in her hot resentment, could hardly wait for school to start. She was so impatient to see Tom punished for the ink-stained spelling book. Any lingering notion of exposing Alfred Temple had been driven away by Tom's offensive remarks. Poor girl, she did not know how fast she was nearing trouble herself. The master, Mr. Dobbins, had reached middle age with an unfulfilled ambition. His dream was to be a doctor, but poverty had forced him to be nothing more than a village schoolmaster. Every day, he took out a mysterious book from his desk and absorbed himself in it during times when no classes were reciting. He kept that book under lock and key. Every student was dying to have a glimpse of it, but the chance never came. Every boy and girl had a theory about the nature of that book, but no two theories were alike. As Becky was passing by the desk, she noticed the key was in the lock. It was a precious moment. She glanced around, found herself alone, and in the next instant, she had the book in her hands. The title page, Professor Somebody's Anatomy, meant nothing to her, so she began to turn the pages. She came upon a beautifully engraved and colored frontispiece, a human figure, stark naked. At that moment, a shadow fell on the page. Tom Sawyer stepped in at the door and caught a glimpse of the picture. Becky snatched at the book to close it, and had the bad luck to tear the pictured page down the middle. She thrust the book into the desk, turned the key, and burst into tears of shame and anger. "Tom Sawyer, you are just as mean as you can be, to sneak up on someone and look at what they're looking at. How could I know you were looking at anything? You ought to be ashamed of yourself, Tom Sawyer. You know you're going to tell on me, and oh, what shall I do? What shall I do? I'll be whipped, and I've never been whipped in school." Then she stamped her little foot and said, "Be mean if you want to. I know something that's going to happen. You just wait and see. Hateful, hateful, hateful." And she flung out of the house with a fresh burst of tears. Tom stood still, rather flustered by this attack. Presently he said to himself, "What a curious kind of fool a girl is. Never been whipped in school? Shucks! What's a whipping? That's just like a girl. They're so thin-skinned and chicken-hearted. Well, of course I ain't going to tell old Dobbins on this little fool, because there's other ways of getting even on her that ain't so mean. But what of it? Old Dobbins will ask who tore his book. Nobody will answer. Then he'll do just what he always does, ask one by one, and when he comes to the right girl, he'll know without anyone telling. Girls' faces always tell on them. They ain't got any backbone. She'll get whipped. Well, it's a tight place for Becky Thatcher, because there ain't any way out of it. Tom joined the crowd of skylarking students outside. In a few moments, the master arrived and school began. Tom didn't feel much interest in his studies. Every time he glanced at the girls' side of the room, Becky's face troubled him. Despite everything, he didn't want to pity her, yet he couldn't help it. He couldn't muster any real satisfaction. When the spelling book incident was discovered, Tom's mind was full of his own troubles. Becky showed interest in the proceedings, not expecting that Tom could escape by denying he spilled the ink on the book himself. And she was right. The denial only made things worse for Tom. Becky tried to convince herself she was glad, but she wasn't sure. When things got really bad, she had an impulse to confess about Alfred Temple but held back, thinking Tom would tell on her for tearing the picture. She wouldn't say a word, not even to save him. Tom took his punishment and returned to his seat, not too heartbroken, thinking he might have accidentally spilled the ink during some fun. He had denied it out of habit and principle. An hour passed. The master nodded off. By and by, Mr. Dobbins straightened up, yawned, unlocked his desk, and reached for his book, hesitating. Most students glanced up, but 2 watched intently. Mr. Dobbins fingered his book absently, then took it out and settled in to read. Tom saw Becky's face turn pale with terror. He forgot their quarrel. Quick, something must be done. He had an idea: run, snatch the book, and flee. But he hesitated a moment too long. The master opened the book. Tom missed his chance. The master turned to face the class. Every eye dropped. The silence was palpable. Who tore this book? No sound. One could hear a pin drop. The master's eyes scanned the room. Benjamin Rogers, did you tear this book? No, sir. Another pause. Joseph Harper, did you? No, sir. Tom's uneasiness grew under the slow torture. The master scanned the boys, then turned to the girls. Amy Lawrence? A shake of the head. Gracie Miller? The same. Susan Harper, did you do this? No, sir. Becky Thatcher was next. Tom trembled. Rebecca Thatcher, the master said. Her face was white with fear. Did you tear— No, look me in the face. Did you tear this book? A thought shot through Tom's mind. He sprang to his feet and shouted, I did it! The class stared in disbelief. Tom stood to gather his wits. When he stepped forward for punishment, the gratitude in Becky's eyes seemed worth 100 whippings. Inspired by his own bravery, he took the hardest beating Mr. Dobbins had ever given without a cry. He didn't mind the extra punishment of staying 2 hours after school, knowing Becky would wait for him. That night, Tom planned revenge against Alfred Temple. Becky had confessed everything, including her own betrayal. But even his desire for revenge couldn't compete with the pleasant thoughts he had as he fell asleep to Becky's words. Tom, how could you be so noble? Vacation was approaching. The schoolmaster, always strict, became even stricter as he prepared for examination day. He wanted the school to do well, so he used his rod and ferule frequently, especially on the younger pupils. Only the biggest boys and the young ladies escaped his punishments. Mr. Dobbins was strong, even though he was middle-aged and bald under his wig. As the big day got closer, he seemed to take pleasure in punishing the smallest mistakes. The younger boys spent their days in fear and their nights plotting revenge. They tried various tricks to upset the master, but he always came out ahead, punishing them severely each time. Finally, they devised a plan that promised a spectacular victory. They included the sign painter's boy, who also disliked the master because he boarded at his house and had often punished him. The master's wife would be away visiting, so there would be no interference. The sign painter's boy promised to execute the plan while the master was napping in his chair on examination evening, then wake him up and send him to school. The big night arrived. At 8 in the evening, the schoolhouse was brightly lit and decorated with flowers and foliage. The master sat in his large chair on a raised platform, looking a bit tipsy. 3 rows of benches on each side and 6 rows in front were filled with the town's dignitaries and parents. To the left, a temporary platform held the students who would participate in the evening's activities. Small boys, uncomfortable in their clean clothes, gawky big boys, and girls and young ladies in their finest dresses, self-conscious about their bare arms and borrowed jewelry. The rest of the schoolhouse was filled with other students. The exercises began with a very little boy who recited, "You'd scarce expect one of my age to speak in public on the stage," etc., with stiff, jerky movements. He got through it, though scared, and received applause. A little girl lisped, "Mary had a little lamb," curtsied, and was applauded, feeling happy. Tom Sawyer then stepped forward confidently to deliver, "Give me liberty or give me death," but he broke down halfway through. A terrible stage fright seized him, and he could hardly speak. The master frowned, making things worse. Tom struggled, then gave up and left the stage, feeling defeated. There was a weak attempt at applause, but it quickly died out. The boy stood on the burning deck, and other recitations followed. Then came reading exercises and a spelling contest. The small Latin class performed well. Finally, it was time for the highlight of the evening, original compositions by the young ladies. Each girl stepped forward in turn, cleared her throat, and read her manuscript, tied with a pretty ribbon, with great care for expression and punctuation. The topics were familiar: friendship, memories of other days, religion in history, dreamland, the advantages of culture, forms of political government compared and contrasted, melancholy, filial love, heart longings, etc. The compositions were marked by a melancholy tone, an overuse of fine language, and a moral sermon at the end, regardless of the topic. This tradition, insincere as it was, persisted and likely would continue indefinitely. The first composition was titled, "Is This Then Life?" An excerpt follows. In the common walks of life, with what delightful emotions does the youthful mind look forward to some anticipated scene of festivity. Imagination is busy sketching rose-tinted pictures of joy. In fancy, the voluptuous votary of fashion sees herself amid the festive throng, the observed of all observers. Her graceful form, arrayed in snowy robes, is whirling through the mazes of the joyous dance. Her eye is brightest, her step is lightest in the gay assembly. In such delicious fancies time quickly glides by, and the welcome hour arrives for her entrance into the Elysian world, of which she has had such bright dreams. How fairy-like does everything appear to her enchanted vision! Each new scene is more charming than the last. But after a while she finds that beneath this goodly exterior all is vanity. The flattery which once charmed her soul now grates harshly upon her ear. The ballroom has lost its charms, and with wasted health and embittered heart, she turns away with the conviction that earthly pleasures cannot satisfy the longings of the soul. The audience responded with whispered praise and enthusiastic applause. Next, a slim, pale girl read a poem titled A Missouri Maiden's Farewell to Alabama. 2 stanzas read, Alabama, goodbye, I love thee well. But yet for a while do I leave thee now. Sad, yes, sad thoughts of thee my heart doth swell, and burning recollections throng my brow, for I have wandered through thy flowery woods, have roamed and read near Tallapoosa's stream, have listened to Talissee's warring floods, and wooed on Coosa's side Aurora's beam. Yet shame I not to bear an o'erfull heart, nor blush to turn behind my tearful eyes. 'Tis from no stranger land I now must part, 'tis to no strangers left I yield these sighs. Welcome and home were mine within this state, whose veils I leave, whose spires fade fast from me, and cold must be mine eyes, and heart, and Tate, when, dear Alabama, they turn cold on thee. Despite not knowing what Tate meant, the audience found the poem satisfactory. A dark-complexioned, black-eyed girl then read a solemn piece titled A Vision, filled with dramatic descriptions of a stormy night. The composition ended with a sermon that won her the first prize. The mayor praised her work, comparing it to Daniel Webster's eloquence. Next, the master, now quite mellow, set aside his chair and began to draw a map of America on the blackboard for a geography exercise. His unsteady hand made a mess of it, causing tittering in the audience. He tried to fix it, but only made it worse. Meanwhile, a cat, tied with a rag to keep it from meowing, was being lowered from the garret above by a string. As it neared the master's head, it grabbed his wig and was swiftly pulled back into the garret. The sign painter's boy had gilded the master's bald head, causing the audience to erupt in laughter. The meeting broke up in chaos, and the boys were finally avenged. Vacation had come. Tom joined a new club called the Cadets of Temperance. He liked their fancy uniforms. He promised to stop smoking, chewing tobacco, and swearing while he was a member. But Tom soon learned something new. When you promise not to do something, it makes you want to do it even more. Tom wanted to drink and swear so badly that he could barely resist. The only thing that kept him in the club was the chance to wear the red sash on special occasions. The 4th of July was coming, and Tom was excited about the parade. However, he couldn't resist his urges for even 2 days, and quit the cadets before the holiday arrived. Then he pinned his hopes on Judge Fraser, a local justice of the peace who was very sick. Tom thought the judge's funeral would be a big event, and hoped to wear his red sash there. For 3 days, Tom anxiously waited for news about the judge. Sometimes, the judge seemed close to death, and Tom would get out his uniform and practice in front of the mirror. But the judge kept getting better, then worse, then better again. Finally, the judge was declared to be recovering. Tom was upset and felt cheated. He resigned from the cadets right away. That very night, Judge Fraser had a relapse and died. Tom resolved never to trust adults again. The judge's funeral was grand. The cadets marched in their best uniforms, which made Tom envious. But he was free from the club now. He could drink and swear if he wanted to, but found that he no longer desired to do so. The simple fact that he could do those things made them less appealing. Tom soon realized that his long-awaited vacation was becoming boring. He tried to keep a diary, but nothing interesting happened for 3 days, so he gave up. A traveling minstrel show came to town, causing excitement. Tom and Joe Harper formed their own band of performers, and they had fun for 2 days. Even the 4th of July was a bit of a letdown because it rained, canceling the parade. Tom was also disappointed when he saw Mr. Benton, the famous U.S. Senator, who turned out to be just an ordinary-looking man. A circus arrived, and the boys played circus for 3 days in tents made of old carpets. They charged 3 pins for boys and 2 for girls. But soon, they tired of this game too. Next came a phrenologist and a mesmerizer. They fascinated the town briefly, but left it duller than ever when they departed. There were some boys and girls parties, but these were few and only made the time between them feel even emptier. Becky Thatcher had gone to visit her parents in Constantinople, leaving Tom with no one to brighten his days. The secret of the murder weighed heavily on him, like a constant pain. Then Tom got the measles. For 2 long weeks he lay in bed, uninterested in the world around him. When he finally recovered and went downtown, he found that everything had changed. There had been a religious revival, and everyone in town had got religion. Even the boys and girls were behaving piously. Tom searched for a familiar face that wasn't changed by the revival, but found none. He saw Joe Harper studying a Bible, Ben Rogers delivering tracts to the poor, and Jim Hollis praising the measles as a divine warning. Each encounter deepened Tom's depression. Finally, he sought out Huckleberry Finn, hoping Huck hadn't changed. But even Huck greeted him with a Bible verse. Tom's heart broke, and he went home, feeling utterly alone. That night, a terrible storm hit. Lightning flashed, thunder boomed, and rain poured down. Tom hid under his blankets, certain that the storm was divine punishment for his sins. He waited in terror, convinced that the heavens were furious with him. However, the storm passed without incident. Tom's first instinct was to be thankful and to reform his ways. But he decided to wait and see if there would be more storms before making any changes. The next day, Tom relapsed into illness. He spent another 3 weeks bedridden. When he finally recovered, he felt no joy, only loneliness. Wandering downtown, he found Jim Hollis playing judge in a mock trial of a cat accused of murdering a bird. He found Joe Harper and Huck Finn hiding in an alley, eating a stolen melon. They, like Tom, had backslid into their old ways after the religious revival wore off. Finally, something exciting happened in the sleepy town. The murder trial began, and it became the main topic everyone talked about. Tom couldn't escape it. Every time someone mentioned the murder, Tom felt a shiver of fear. He worried that people might suspect he knew something. He was constantly on edge. Tom needed to talk to someone about his fears, so he took Huck to a quiet place to have a chat. He wanted to make sure Huck hadn't told anyone their secret. "Huck, have you ever told anybody about that night?" Tom asked. "About what?" Huck replied. "You know what?" Tom said. "Oh, of course not," Huck answered. "Never a word." "Never?" Tom pressed. "Never, so help me. Why are you asking?" "I was just scared," Tom admitted. "Tom, if anyone found out, we wouldn't be alive for 2 days," Huck said seriously. "You know that." Tom felt a bit better. After a pause, he asked, "Huck, nobody could make you tell, could they?" "Make me tell? No way. I wouldn't want that half-breed devil to drown me." "Okay, good. But let's swear again, just to be sure," Tom suggested. "I'm in," Huck agreed. So they swore again, with solemn promises. "What are people saying about the trial?" Tom asked. "All they talk about is Muff Potter. It makes me want to hide," Huck said. "Same here. I feel sorry for him sometimes," Tom admitted. "Me too. He's never hurt anyone, just fishes and gets drunk. He's been nice to me," Huck said. "He's helped me too." "I wish we could help him," Tom said. "We can't get him out of jail, Tom, and even if we did, they'd catch him again," Huck said. "Yeah, you're right, but it's hard hearing people talk bad about him," Tom said. "They call him the worst villain and wonder why he wasn't hanged before," Huck said. "They'd lynch him if he got out," Tom agreed. The boys talked for a long time, but it didn't make them feel any better. As it got dark, they found themselves near the jail, hoping for some miracle to save Muff Potter. But nothing happened. The boys went to the jail window and gave Potter some tobacco and matches. He was on the ground floor, with no guards around. Potter was grateful for their gifts. His gratitude made the boys feel even guiltier. He said, "You boys have been good to me. I don't forget it. I used to help all the kids, and now you're helping me. I did a terrible thing when I was drunk and crazy, and now I have to pay for it. But you boys don't get drunk, or you might end up like me. Thanks for being here. It's good to see friendly faces." Tom went home feeling miserable, and his dreams were full of nightmares. The next day, he hung around the courthouse, wanting to go in but too scared. Huck felt the same way. They avoided each other, but both kept coming back to the courthouse. Tom listened to the news coming from the courtroom. Things looked bad for Muff Potter. Injun Joe's testimony was solid, and everyone expected the jury to find Potter guilty. Tom was out late that night and came to bed very excited. He couldn't sleep for hours. The next morning, the courthouse was packed. Everyone wanted to see the trial's conclusion. The jury came in, and Potter, looking hopeless, was brought in with chains. Injun Joe sat calmly, as usual. The trial began. Witnesses testified against Potter, but his lawyer didn't ask any questions. The audience grew restless, thinking the lawyer wasn't even trying to save Potter. Finally, the prosecution rested its case. Potter's lawyer stood up and said, "We plan to argue that our client was not in his right mind due to drunkenness, but we've changed our minds. Call Thomas Sawyer." Everyone was surprised. Tom nervously took the stand. The judge asked him where he was on the night of the murder. "In the graveyard," Tom said. "Were you near Horse Williams's grave?" the judge asked. "Yes, sir," Tom replied. "Were you hidden?" the judge continued. "Yes, sir," Tom answered. Tom told the whole story, starting slowly but gaining confidence. The audience listened intently. When Tom described Injun Joe attacking the doctor, the tension reached its peak. Suddenly, Injun Joe leapt through a window and escaped. The courtroom erupted in chaos as everyone tried to process what had just happened. Tom was a hero once more. Everyone in the village admired him. The old people loved him, and the young ones envied him. The village newspaper even wrote about him, predicting he might become president one day if he managed to stay out of trouble. People's attitudes towards Muff Potter changed completely. They had treated him badly before, but now they showered him with kindness and sympathy. The world can be strange, but sometimes it gets things right. For Tom, his days were filled with joy and excitement. But his nights were a different story. He was haunted by nightmares of Injun Joe. The fear of Injun Joe finding him made Tom dread nightfall. Poor Huck felt the same way. Tom had told the whole story to the lawyer before the trial, and Huck worried that his part in the secret might still come out, even though Injun Joe's escape had spared him from testifying. Huck had made the lawyer promise to keep the secret, but that didn't comfort him much. If Tom had been driven by his guilty conscience to tell the lawyer, Huck couldn't trust that the secret would stay safe. Every day, Muff Potter's gratitude made Tom feel glad he had spoken up. But every night, Tom wished he had kept silent. Tom was torn. He feared Injun Joe would never be caught, but he also feared what would happen if he was. Tom felt he could never be truly safe until Injun Joe was dead and he had seen the body himself. Rewards were offered, and the countryside was searched, but no one found Injun Joe. A detective from St. Louis came to investigate. He looked around, acted wise, and found a clue. But you can't arrest a clue for murder. After the detective left, Tom felt just as afraid as before. Time passed slowly, and with each day, Tom's fear eased just a little bit. Every boy dreams of finding hidden treasure. One day, Tom felt this desire strongly. He looked for Joe Harper but couldn't find him. Next, he tried to find Ben Rogers, but Ben had gone fishing. Then, he found Huck Finn and shared his treasure-hunting plan. Huck was always willing to join an adventure, especially one that required no money. "Where'll we dig?" asked Huck. "Oh, most anywhere," replied Tom. "Is it hidden all around?" asked Huck. "No, it's hidden in very specific places, sometimes on islands, sometimes under an old dead tree, just where the shadow falls at midnight, but mostly under the floor in haunted houses." "Who hides it?" asked Huck. "Robbers, of course. I wouldn't hide it if it were mine. I'd spend it and have a good time," Huck said. "So would I. But robbers don't do that. They always hide it and leave it there." "Don't they come back for it?" Huck asked. "They think they will, but they usually forget the marks, or they die. The treasure just stays there until someone finds an old map with clues on how to find it." "Do you have one of those maps, Tom?" "No." "Then how are you going to find the treasure?" "I don't need a map. We'll just look in the usual places, haunted houses or under a dead tree with one limb sticking out." They decided to start with an old dead limb tree on the hill. They grabbed a pick and a shovel and set off on their 3-mile hike. When they arrived, they rested under an elm tree and had a smoke. "What are you going to do with your share if we find treasure?" Tom asked. "I'll buy pie and soda every day and go to every circus," Huck replied. "Won't you save any of it?" "What for? My pap would come back and take it if I didn't spend it quickly." Tom said he would buy a new drum, a real sword, a red necktie, a bullpup, and get married. Huck was shocked. "Married?" "Yes." "Tom, you're crazy. Look at my parents. They fought all the time." "The girl I marry won't fight," Tom said confidently. They started digging, but after half an hour they found nothing. They tried another spot, but still no luck. Huck suggested trying the tree behind the widow's house next. They decided to come back at midnight to dig where the shadow of the limb falls. They hid their tools and left. That night, they returned and marked the shadow at midnight. They dug and dug, but found only stones. Tom realized they might have guessed the wrong time. Huck suggested trying a haunted house next. Tom agreed, but Huck was scared of ghosts. Tom reassured him that ghosts don't come out during the day. The next day they approached the haunted house. It stood in a moonlit valley, isolated, with weeds covering the steps and the roof caved in. They decided to tackle it the next day in the daylight, hopeful but cautious. About noon the next day, the boys arrived at the dead tree to get their tools. Tom was eager to go to the haunted house. Huck was also eager, but suddenly said, "Looky here, Tom, do you know what day it is?" Tom thought about the days of the week and then looked startled. "My, I never once thought of it, Huck." "Well, I didn't neither, but it just hit me that today is Friday." "Blame it. A body can't be too careful, Huck. We might have got into an awful scrape, tackling such a thing on a Friday." "Might? Better say we would. There's some lucky days, maybe, but Friday ain't." "Any fool knows that. I don't reckon you was the first that found it out, Huck." "Well, I never said I was, did I? And Friday ain't all, neither. I had a bad dream last night, dreamt about rats." "No, sure sign of trouble. Did they fight?" "No." "Well, that's good, Huck. When they don't fight, it's only a sign that there's trouble around. All we got to do is to look sharp and keep out of it. We'll drop this thing for today and play. Do you know Robin Hood, Huck?" "No." "Who's Robin Hood?" "Why, he was one of the greatest men that ever lived in England, and the best. He was a robber." "Cracky, I wish I was." "Who did he rob?" "Only sheriffs and bishops and rich people and kings. But he never bothered the poor. He loved them. He always shared with them. Well, he must have been a brick." "He was, Huck. Oh, he was the noblest man that ever was. They ain't any such men now, I can tell you. He could lick any man in England with one hand tied behind him, and he could take his U-bow and plug a 10-cent piece every time, 1.5 miles. "What's a U-bow?" "I don't know. It's some kind of a bow, of course. And if he hit that dime only on the edge, he would sit down and cry, and curse. But we'll play Robin Hood. It's nobby fun. I'll learn you." "I'm agreed." So they played Robin Hood all afternoon, sometimes looking at the haunted house and talking about their plans for the next day. As the sun began to set, they walked home through the shadows of the trees and soon were hidden from sight in the woods of Cardiff Hill. On Saturday, just after noon, the boys were at the dead tree again. They had a smoke and a chat in the shade, and then dug a little in their last hole, not with much hope, but because Tom said that many people had given up treasure when they were only inches away from it. They didn't find anything, so they picked up their tools and went away, feeling they had done everything treasure hunters should do. When they reached the haunted house, the silence and desolation made them afraid to enter at first. They peeped through the door and saw a weed-filled room with no floor, an old fireplace, broken windows, a ruined staircase, and cobwebs everywhere. They entered softly, talking in whispers, ready to run at any moment. Soon they felt bolder and started to explore. They decided to go upstairs. This felt like cutting off their escape route, but they dared each other until they went up. They found the same signs of decay. In one corner they found a closet that seemed mysterious, but it was empty. Their courage was high, and they were about to start work when— "Shh," said Tom. "What is it?" whispered Huck, blanching with fright. "Shh. There. Hear it?" "Yes. Oh my, let's run." "Keep still. Don't budge. They're coming right toward the door." The boys lay down on the floor and looked through knotholes, waiting in fear. They've stopped. No, they're coming. Here they are. Don't whisper another word, Huck. My goodness, I wish I was out of this. 2 men entered. Each boy thought, there's the old deaf and dumb Spaniard who's been around town lately. Never saw the other man before. The other man was ragged and rough-looking. The Spaniard had a serape, bushy white whiskers, long white hair, and green goggles. The stranger was talking in a low voice. They sat down with their backs to the wall, facing the door, and the stranger continued talking. His manner became less guarded, and his words clearer. No, said he. I've thought it over, and I don't like it. It's dangerous. Dangerous, grunted the deaf and dumb Spaniard, to the boys' surprise. Milksop. The boys gasped and trembled. It was Injun Joe's voice. There was silence for some time. Then Joe said, What's more dangerous than that job up the river, but nothing's come of it. That's different. It's far away and no other houses around. It won't ever be known that we tried, as long as we didn't succeed. Well, what's more dangerous than coming here in the daytime? Anybody would suspect us if they saw us. I know that. But there wasn't any other place as handy after that fool job. I want to quit this shanty. I wanted to yesterday, but those infernal boys were playing over there on the hill in full view. The boys quaked at this remark, glad they had remembered it was Friday, and decided to wait. They wished they had waited a year. The men got some food and made lunch. After a long silence, Injun Joe said, Look here, lad. You go back up the river where you belong. Wait there till you hear from me. I'll take the chance of coming to town once more for a look. We'll do that dangerous job after I've looked around. Then for Texas, we'll leg it together. This was satisfactory. Both men started to yawn, and Injun Joe said, I'm dead for sleep. It's your turn to watch. He lay down in the weeds and soon began to snore. His comrade stirred him once or twice, and he became quiet. Presently, the watcher began to nod. His head drooped lower and lower, and both men began to snore. The boys drew a long, grateful breath. Tom whispered, Now's our chance. Come. Huck said, I can't. I'd die if they wake. Tom urged, but Huck held back. At last, Tom rose slowly and started alone. But the first step he took made such a loud creak that he sank down in fright. He never tried again. The boys lay there, counting the dragging moments, grateful to see the sun setting. One snore stopped. Injun Joe sat up, stared around, smiled grimly at his comrade, who was dozing, stirred him up with his foot, and said, Here, you're a watchman, ain't you? All right, though, nothing's happened. My, have I been asleep? Oh, partly. Nearly time for us to move, pard. What'll we do with what little swag we've got left? I don't know. Leave it here as always, I reckon. No use to take it away till we start south. 650 in silver is something to carry. All right. It won't matter to come here once more. No, but we'll come at night as usual. It's better. Yes, but look here. It may be a while before I get the right chance at that job. Accidents might happen. We'll just bury it, and bury it deep. Good idea, said the comrade. He knelt, raised a hearthstone, and took out a bag that jingled. He subtracted some money for himself and Injun Joe, and passed the bag to the latter, who was digging with his bowie knife. The boys watched, forgetting their fear and misery. With gloating eyes, they saw Joe's knife strike something. Hello, said he. What is it? Said his comrade. Half-rotten plank. No, it's a box. Here, help me see what's here. Never mind. I've broken a hole." He reached in and drew out a handful of coins. The boys were as excited as the men. Joe's comrade said, "We'll make quick work of this. There's a rusty pick in the weeds the other side of the fireplace. I saw it a minute ago." He brought the boys pick and shovel. Injun Joe examined the pick, shook his head, muttered, and began to use it. The box was unearthed. It was iron-bound and had been very strong before the years weakened it. The men contemplated the treasure in blissful silence. "Pard, there's thousands of dollars here," said Injun Joe. "Merle's gang used to be around here one summer," the stranger observed. "I know it," said Injun Joe. "This looks like it." "Now you won't need to do that job." The half-breed frowned. "You don't know me. It ain't robbery. It's revenge." His eyes flamed. "I'll need your help. When it's finished, then Texas." "Well, if you say so. What'll we do with this? Bury it again?" "Yes. No, by the great Sachem, no. I'd nearly forgot. That pick had fresh earth on it. Who brought them here? Where are they?" The adventure of the previous day haunted Tom's dreams all night. 4 times he had his hands on the rich treasure, and 4 times it slipped away, leaving him with nothing but the cold reality of his misfortune. When he woke up in the early morning, the events of the day before seemed distant, like a dream. Then he thought maybe it was a dream. The amount of money he'd seen was too vast to be real. He had never seen as much as $50 in one place before. Like all boys his age and from his background, he thought any mention of hundreds or thousands was just talk. He couldn't believe that such sums of money actually existed. If his ideas of hidden treasure had been analyzed, they would have turned out to be a few real coins and a bushel of imaginary grand dollars. But the more he thought about the events, the clearer they became. Soon, he started to believe that maybe it wasn't a dream after all. He had to find out for sure. He decided to have a quick breakfast and go find Huck. He found Huck sitting on the edge of a flatboat, looking very sad and dangling his feet in the water. Tom decided to let Huck bring up the topic. If he didn't, then Tom would know it had been a dream. "Hello, Huck." "Hello yourself." Silence for a minute. "Tom, if we'd left the blame tools at the dead tree, we'd have got the money. Oh, ain't it awful?" "It ain't a dream then. It ain't a dream. Somehow I almost wish it was. Dogged if I don't, Huck." "What ain't a dream?" "Oh, that thing yesterday. I've been half thinking it was." "Dream. If them stairs hadn't broken down, you'd have seen how much of a dream it was. I've had dreams enough all night, with that patch-eyed Spanish devil chasing me all through 'em. Rot him." "No, not rot him. Find him. Track the money." "Tom, we'll never find him. A feller don't get more than one chance for such a pile, and that one's lost. I'd feel mighty shaky if I was to see him anyway." "Well, so'd I, but I'd like to see him anyway, and track him out to his number 2. "Number 2. Yeah, that's it. I've been thinking about that. But I can't make nothing out of it. What do you reckon it is?" "I don't know. It's too deep. Say, Huck, maybe it's the number of a house." "Goody." "No, Tom, that ain't it. If it is, it ain't in this one-horse town. They ain't no numbers here." "Well, that's true. Let me think a minute. Here, it's the number of a room. In a tavern, you know." "Oh, that's the trick. There are only 2 taverns. We can find out quick. You stay here, Huck, till I come back." Tom was off at once. He didn't want to have Huck with him in public places. He was gone for half an hour. When he came back, He had found out that in the best tavern, number 2 was occupied by a young lawyer. In the less fancy tavern, number 2 was a mystery. The tavern keeper's son said it was always locked, and he never saw anyone go in or come out except at night. He didn't know why, and had imagined that the room was haunted. He had seen a light in there the night before. "That's what I've found out, Huck. I reckon that's the very number 2 we're after." "I reckon it is, Tom. Now what are you going to do?" "Let me think." Tom thought for a long time. Then he said, "I'll tell you. The back door of that number 2 is the one that comes out into that little alley between the tavern and the old brick store. Now you get all the door keys you can find, and I'll get all of Aunt Polly's keys. The first dark night, we'll go there and try them. And keep a lookout for Injun Joe, because he said he'd drop into town and spy around for a chance to get his revenge. If you see him, follow him. If he doesn't go to that number 2, then it's not the place." "Lordy, I don't want to follow him by myself." "Why, it'll be night. He might not see you, and if he does, maybe he won't think anything of it." "Well, if it's pretty dark, I reckon I'll track him. I don't know. I'll try." "You bet I'll follow him if it's dark, Huck. Why, he might have found out he can't get his revenge and be going after that money." "It's so, Tom, it's so. I'll follow him. I will, by jingoes." "Now you're talking. Don't you ever weaken, Huck, and I won't." The boys felt better after making this plan. They felt they had some control over their situation and some hope of finding the treasure. That night, Tom and Huck were ready for their adventure. They hung around the tavern, one watching the alley and the other watching the tavern door. Nobody resembling the Spaniard entered or left the tavern door, and nobody went into the alley. The night was clear, so Tom went home, telling Huck to come and meow if the night became dark enough for them to try the keys. But the night remained clear, and Huck went to bed in an empty sugar hogshead around midnight. Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday nights brought the same bad luck, but Thursday night seemed promising. Tom sneaked out with Aunt Polly's old tin lantern and a towel to cover it. He hid the lantern in Huck's sugar hogshead, and the watch began. By midnight, the tavern closed, and its lights went out. No Spaniard had been seen. Everything was perfect. It was pitch dark, and the only sounds were distant thunder. Tom got his lantern, lit it in the hogshead, and wrapped it in the towel. He and Huck crept towards the tavern. Huck stood guard while Tom went into the alley. Huck anxiously waited, feeling like a mountain was weighing on him. He wished he could see a flash from the lantern. It would scare him, but at least he'd know Tom was alive. It felt like hours since Tom disappeared. Maybe he fainted or died from terror. Huck found himself creeping closer to the alley, scared of what might happen. Suddenly, there was a flash of light, and Tom came running, yelling, "Run! Run for your life!" Huck didn't need to be told twice. He was already running as fast as he could. They didn't stop until they reached an old, abandoned shed at the end of the village. Just as they got inside, the storm broke and the rain poured down. When Tom caught his breath, he said, "Huck, it was awful. I tried 2 of the keys, but they made so much noise. I couldn't breathe, I was so scared. They didn't fit. Then, without thinking, I grabbed the knob and the door opened. It wasn't locked. I went in and took off the towel, and great Caesar's ghost." "What? What did you see, Tom?" "Huck, I almost stepped on Injun Joe's hand." "No." "Yes. He was lying there, sound asleep on the floor with his old patch on his eye and his arms spread out. "Lordy, what did you do? Did he wake up?" "No, he didn't budge. He was drunk, I reckon. I just grabbed the towel and ran." "I wouldn't have thought of the towel." "Well, I did. Aunt Polly would make me mighty sick if I lost it." "Tom, did you see that box?" "Huck, I didn't wait to look around. I didn't see the box or the cross. I only saw a bottle and a tin cup on the floor by Injun Joe. There were 2 barrels and lots more bottles in the room. Don't you see now what's the matter with that haunted room?" "How?" "It's haunted with whiskey. Maybe all the temperance taverns have a haunted room. Hey, Huck?" "Well, I reckon maybe that's so. Who'd have thought of that? But Tom, now's a good time to get that box if Injun Joe's drunk." "It is. You try it." Huck shuddered. "Well, no, I reckon not." "And I reckon not, Huck. 1 bottle beside Injun Joe isn't enough. If there were 3, he'd be drunk enough, and I'd do it." They reflected in silence, and then Tom said, "Huck, let's not try this again until we know Injun Joe's not there. It's too scary. If we watch every night, we'll see him leave sometime, and then we'll snatch the box. I'll watch all night, every night, if you'll do the other part." "All right. If you see something, just come and meow. If I'm asleep, throw gravel at the window." "Agreed. Good as wheat. The storm's over. I'll go home. It'll be daylight soon. You go back and watch?" "I will, Tom. I'll haunt that tavern every night for a year. I'll sleep all day and stand watch all night." "That's good. Where will you sleep?" "In Ben Rogers' hayloft. He lets me, and so does his pap's black man, Uncle Jake. I tote water for Uncle Jake, and he gives me something to eat if he can spare it. He's a mighty good man, Tom. He likes me because I don't act like I'm above him. Sometimes I eat with him, but you needn't tell that. A body's got to do things when he's hungry he wouldn't do otherwise. I won't bother you in the daytime. Anytime you see something at night, just come and meow." On Friday morning, Tom woke up to some great news. Judge Thatcher's family had returned to town the night before. For a moment, Tom forgot about Injun Joe and the treasure. Becky Thatcher was back, and that was all that mattered to him. Tom saw Becky, and they played games like Hispy and Gully Keeper with their friends. The day got even better when Becky asked her mom if they could finally have the picnic that had been promised for so long. Her mom agreed. Becky was thrilled, and Tom was just as excited. They sent out invitations before sunset, and soon all the kids in the village were preparing for the picnic. Tom stayed up late, hoping Huck would signal him about the treasure, but no signal came that night. The next morning, around 10 or 11 o'clock, a lively group of kids gathered at Judge Thatcher's house, ready to go. Older people usually didn't join these picnics, thinking the kids were safe enough with some young ladies and gentlemen. They rented an old ferry boat for the event. Everyone walked through the main street, carrying baskets of food. Sid was sick and couldn't come, and Mary stayed home to take care of him. As they were leaving, Mrs. Thatcher told Becky, "You'll be back late. Maybe you should stay the night with one of your friends near the ferry landing." "Then I'll stay with Susie Harper, Mom," Becky replied. "All right. Be good and don't cause any trouble," her mom said. As they walked, Tom had an idea. "Hey, Becky, let's go to Widow Douglas's house instead. She has ice cream, lots of it. She'll be happy to see us." "That sounds fun," Becky said, but then hesitated. "What will Mom say?" "She won't know. What's the harm?" Tom convinced her. Becky agreed, and they decided not to tell anyone about their plan. Tom then remembered that Huck might come that night to signal about the treasure. This thought dampened his excitement a bit. But he reasoned that the signal didn't come the night before, so it probably wouldn't come tonight either. He decided to enjoy the picnic and not think about the treasure for the day. 3 miles downriver, the ferry boat stopped, and the kids ran into the woods, shouting and laughing. They played until they were tired, and then gathered to eat the food they had brought. After eating, they rested under the trees. Someone then shouted, "Who's ready for the cave?" Everyone was. They grabbed candles and rushed up the hill to the cave. The cave entrance was shaped like a big letter A and had a heavy wooden door. Inside it was cold and dark. The kids lit their candles and started exploring. The cave was a maze of narrow passages, some leading nowhere. It was said that one could get lost in there for days. Tom led the group along the main path, and soon they were splitting off into smaller groups, trying to surprise each other in the dark corridors. After a while, they all returned to the cave entrance, tired but happy. They had lost track of time, and it was almost night. The ferry boat took them back to town, and Huck saw its lights as it passed the wharf. He wondered why it didn't stop, but quickly refocused on his task. It was dark, and the village was quiet. Huck waited and waited, almost giving up, when he heard a noise. 2 men came out, and one was carrying something. Huck guessed it was the treasure box. He decided to follow them quietly. The men walked up the river street, turned onto a cross street, and then took a path up Cardiff Hill. They passed the Welshman's house and continued up. Huck followed closely. They went into a narrow path through some bushes, and Huck followed carefully. Suddenly, he heard Injun Joe's voice. They were planning to hurt Widow Douglas because her husband had wronged him. Huck was scared but knew he had to warn her. He backed away carefully, then ran to the Welshman's house and banged on the door. He told them everything, and soon the Welshman and his sons, armed, were heading up the hill. Huck hid and listened. There was a tense silence, then gunshots and a cry. Huck didn't wait to find out what happened. He ran down the hill as fast as he could. As the first light of dawn appeared on Sunday morning, Huck came quietly up the hill and knocked softly on the Welshman's door. The people inside were asleep but alert due to the exciting events of the night. A voice called from a window. "Who's there?" Huck replied in a scared whisper. "Please let me in. It's only Huck Finn." "It's a name that can open this door any time, lad, and welcome." These were strange and kind words for Huck. He had never heard such pleasant words directed at him before. The door was quickly unlocked, and he entered. Huck was given a seat, and the old man and his tall sons dressed quickly. "Now, my boy, I hope you're hungry because breakfast will be ready soon, and we'll have a hot one. Make yourself comfortable. We hoped you'd stay here last night." "I was really scared," Huck said. "I ran when the pistols went off and didn't stop for 3 miles. I came now because I wanted to know what happened, and I came before daylight because I didn't want to meet those devils, even if they were dead." "Well, poor chap, you do look like you've had a rough night, but there's a bed for you after breakfast. No, they aren't dead. We're sorry about that. We knew where to find them because of your description. We sneaked up close, but then I had to sneeze. I tried to hold it back, but it came out. I was in the lead with my pistol raised, and when I sneezed, the scoundrels ran. I shouted, 'Fire, boys!' and we shot at the rustling sounds. But they escaped, and we chased them into the woods. They fired a shot each as they ran, but missed us. We then got the constables, and they guarded the riverbank. This morning the sheriff and a group will search the woods. My boys will join them soon." We wish we had a better description of those rascals. Did you see what they looked like? Oh yes, I saw them in town and followed them. Great, describe them. One is the old deaf and dumb Spaniard, and the other is a mean-looking, ragged man. That's enough, lad, we know the men. We saw them behind the widow's house one day. Off you go, boys. Tell the sheriff. Get your breakfast tomorrow. The Welshman's sons left immediately. As they were leaving, Huck jumped up and said, "Oh, please don't tell anyone it was me who told on them. Please." "All right, Huck, but you deserve credit." "Oh, no, please don't tell." After the young men left, the old Welshman said, "They won't tell, and I won't either, but why don't you want anyone to know?" Huck wouldn't explain much. He just said he knew too much about one of those men and didn't want him to know that Huck knew. He feared he would be killed for it. The old man promised to keep the secret again and asked, "How did you come to follow these fellows? Did they seem suspicious?" Huck was quiet for a moment, then said, "Well, people say I'm a bad kid, and sometimes I can't sleep because of it. Last night, I couldn't sleep, so I went up the street around midnight. When I got to the old brick store by the Temperance Tavern, I leaned against the wall to think. Then these two guys came along, and one wanted a light for his cigar. The cigars lit up their faces, and I saw that one was the deaf and dumb Spaniard with white whiskers and an eye patch, and the other was a ragged-looking man." "Could you see the rags by the cigar light?" Huck was thrown off for a moment, but then said, "Well, I don't know, but it seems like I did." "Then they went on, and you—" "Followed them. I wanted to see what was up. I followed them to the widow's stile, stood in the dark, and heard the ragged one beg for the widow and the Spaniard swear he'd ruin her looks just like I told you." "What? The deaf and dumb man said all that?" Huck realized he had made a mistake. He tried to cover it up, but the old man's eyes were on him. Huck made blunder after blunder. The Welshman finally said, "My boy, don't be afraid of me. I'd protect you. This Spaniard isn't deaf and dumb. You let that slip. You know something about him. Trust me. Tell me what it is, and I won't betray you." Huck looked into the old man's honest eyes and whispered, "It ain't a Spaniard. It's Injun Joe." The Welshman almost jumped out of his chair. He said, "Now it makes sense. When you talked about notching ears and slitting noses, I thought it was your own embellishment because white men don't take that sort of revenge. But an Injun, that's different." During breakfast, the Welshman said the last thing he and his sons did before bed was check the stile for blood. They found none, but did find a bulky bundle. "Of what?" Huck's eyes widened. He was breathless, waiting for the answer. The Welshman stared back and then replied, "Of burglars' tools. Why, what's the matter with you?" Huck was deeply relieved. The Welshman eyed him curiously and said, "Burglars' tools. That seems to relieve you a lot. What did you expect we found?" Huck was in a tight spot. He gave a feeble answer. "Sunday school books, maybe." The old man laughed, which made Huck feel better. The Welshman added, "Poor boy, you're tired. No wonder you're a bit off. But you'll be fine with rest." Huck was annoyed he had given himself away, but he was glad to know the bundle wasn't the treasure. He felt comfortable knowing the treasure must still be in the tavern's room number 2. He and Tom could get the gold that night without any trouble. Just as breakfast was finished, there was a knock at the door. Huck hid, not wanting to be connected to the night's events. The Welshman let in several people, including the widow Douglas. Groups of people were climbing the hill to see the stile. The Welshman had to tell the story of the night to the visitors. The widow was very grateful. "Don't mention it, madam. There's someone else you owe more to than me and my boys, but he doesn't want his name known. We wouldn't have been there but for him." This excited everyone's curiosity, but the Welshman kept the secret. The widow said, "I went to sleep reading and slept through all the noise. Why didn't you wake me?" "We thought it wasn't worth it. Those fellows weren't likely to come back without their tools. My 3 men guarded your house all night." More visitors came, and the story was told again and again. Everyone was early at church, discussing the events. News came that the villains had not been found. When the sermon ended, Judge Thatcher's wife asked Mrs. Harper, "Is my Becky going to sleep all day? I expected she would be tired." "Your Becky?" Mrs. Harper replied, surprised. "Didn't she stay with you last night?" "No," Mrs. Thatcher said, turning pale. Aunt Polly then joined them, saying, "Good morning, Mrs. Thatcher, Mrs. Harper. I have a boy missing. I reckon my Tom stayed with one of you last night." Mrs. Thatcher shook her head, looking even paler. "He didn't stay with us," Mrs. Harper said, looking uneasy. Aunt Polly became worried. "Joe Harper, have you seen my Tom this morning?" "No, ma'am." "When did you see him last?" Joe couldn't remember exactly. The people in the church stopped moving and whispered among themselves. Anxiety grew on everyone's faces. Children were questioned, and young teachers too. They all said they didn't notice if Tom and Becky were on the ferryboat home. It was dark. One young man finally said he feared they were still in the cave. Mrs. Thatcher fainted, and Aunt Polly started crying. The alarm spread quickly. Bells rang, and the whole town was up. People saddled horses, manned skiffs, and the ferryboat was ordered out. Soon, 200 men were heading to the cave. All afternoon the village was empty and silent. Many women visited Aunt Polly and Mrs. Thatcher, trying to comfort them. They cried with them, which was better than words. The town waited all night for news. In the morning, the message was, "Send more candles and food." Mrs. Thatcher and Aunt Polly were almost crazed. Judge Thatcher sent messages of hope, but they didn't cheer anyone. The old Welshman came home at dawn, covered in candle grease and clay, and exhausted. He found Huck still in bed, delirious with fever. The widow Douglas took care of Huck, saying she would do her best by him, because he was the Lord's, and nothing the Lord's should be neglected. The Welshman agreed, saying Huck had good spots in him. In the morning, tired men returned to the village, but the strongest kept searching. News came that deep parts of the cave were being searched. Lights were seen flitting in the distance, and shouts and pistol shots echoed. Far in the cave, the names Becky and Tom were found on a wall, along with a piece of ribbon Mrs. Thatcher recognized. She cried over it, saying it was the last thing her child had before death. People said lights were seen and shouts were heard, but always ended in disappointment. The children were not there. It was just a searcher's light. 3 dreadful days and nights passed. The village was in a stupor. No one had energy for anything. Huck, in a lucid moment, asked if anything had been found at the Temperance Tavern. "Yes," said the widow. Huck sat up. "What? What was it?" "Liquor. The place is shut down. Lie down, child. Only tell me one thing. Was it Tom Sawyer who found it?" The widow burst into tears. "Hush, child, hush. You must not talk. You are very sick." Huck thought, so the treasure was gone forever. But why was she crying? These thoughts made him tired, and he fell asleep. The widow said to herself, "He's asleep, poor boy. Tom Sawyer find it. Pity someone could find Tom Sawyer. Not many have the hope or strength to keep searching now." Now let's talk about Tom and Becky's part in the picnic. They walked through the dark paths of the cave with the other kids, looking at the familiar wonders of the cave. These were places with names like the drawing room, the cathedral, and Aladdin's palace. They played hide-and-seek for a while until they got tired. Then, holding their candles, they wandered down a twisting path, reading the names and dates written on the walls in candle smoke. They didn't notice that they were now in a part of the cave with no writings on the walls. They wrote their names on a rock and kept walking. Soon, they found a little stream of water that had formed a beautiful stone waterfall over many years. Tom squeezed behind it to show Becky and saw a narrow, steep path behind it. Tom wanted to explore, so they marked their spot with smoke to find their way back and started their adventure. They went deep into the cave, making more marks as they went. They found a big cavern with shiny stalactites hanging from the ceiling and admired it before moving on. They came across a spring with a basin covered in sparkling crystals. The cavern had many pillars formed by stalactites and stalagmites joining together. Thousands of bats were hanging from the roof, and the lights disturbed them. They flew around wildly, and one bat knocked Becky's candle out. Tom grabbed her hand, and they ran through another passage to escape the bats. After a while, they reached a large underground lake and decided to rest. For the first time, they noticed the deep silence of the cave. Becky said, "It's been a long time since I heard any of the others." Tom replied, "We are far below them, and we couldn't hear them from here." Becky got worried. "We better start back." Tom agreed. "Yes, we should." Becky asked, "Can you find the way back, Tom? It all looks the same to me." Tom felt unsure but said, "I think so. But the bats might put out our candles. Let's try another way." They walked through a corridor in silence, looking for something familiar, but everything looked strange. Tom kept saying it was all right, but he felt less confident each time. They started turning into random passages, hoping to find their way. Tom kept saying it was all right, but the fear in his heart made the words sound like all is lost. Becky held on to him, crying and scared. Eventually Becky said, "Tom, let's go back the way we came. We're getting more lost." Tom listened for a moment and then shouted. The echoes sounded like mocking laughter. Becky begged him not to shout again, but Tom thought it might help them get found. He shouted again, but there was no reply. Tom realized he couldn't find their way back. He confessed, "Becky, I was such a fool. I didn't think we might need to come back. We're lost." Becky cried and blamed herself for leaving the others. Tom tried to comfort her, but she was too upset. She clung to him, and they sat together in their fear and regret. They wandered aimlessly, hoping to find the way out. Tom blew out Becky's candle to save it, showing the seriousness of their situation. Becky understood and lost hope again. They were very tired, but kept moving to avoid sitting down and giving up. Finally, Becky couldn't walk any further and sat down. They talked about home and their friends. Becky fell asleep, and Tom watched her peaceful face, which gave him some comfort. Becky woke up with a laugh, but then remembered where they were and groaned. Tom tried to keep her hopeful, saying they would find the way out. They wandered, trying to estimate how long they had been in the cave. Tom decided they should find a spring for water. They found one, and Tom suggested resting. Becky was hungry, and Tom took out a piece of cake they had saved from the picnic. They shared it, but it wasn't enough. Tom told Becky they had to stay near the water because it was their last candle. Becky cried, but Tom tried to comfort her. Becky said, "They'll miss us and hunt for us." Tom agreed, hoping they were already looking. Becky realized it might be a long time before they were missed, and they watched their candle burn down to the last bit. The darkness was terrifying. They tried to rest again, but hunger and fear kept them awake. Tom suggested exploring nearby passages with a kite line. They started exploring, but soon encountered a deep pit. They couldn't cross it and had to wait for rescuers. Tom shouted again, but the echoes were too scary. They returned to the spring, exhausted and hungry. Tom thought it must be Tuesday by now. He decided to explore another passage despite the risk of meeting Injun Joe. Becky was too weak and told Tom to go without her, but come back often. Tom kissed Becky and took the kite line, crawling through another passage. He was scared and hungry, but determined to find a way out. Now let's talk about Tom and Becky's part in the picnic. They walked through the dark paths of the cave with the other kids, looking at the familiar wonders of the cave. These were places with names like the drawing room, the cathedral, and Aladdin's palace. They played hide-and-seek for a while until they got tired. Then, holding their candles, they wandered down a twisting path, reading the names and dates written on the walls in candle smoke. They didn't notice that they were now in a part of the cave with no writings on the walls. They wrote their names on a rock and kept walking. Soon, they found a little stream of water that had formed a beautiful stone waterfall over many years. Tom squeezed behind it to show Becky and saw a narrow, steep path behind it. Tom wanted to explore, so they marked their spot with smoke to find their way back and started their adventure. They went deep into the cave, making more marks as they went. They found a big cavern with shiny stalactites hanging from the ceiling and admired it before moving on. They came across a spring with a basin covered in sparkling crystals. The cavern had many pillars formed by stalactites and stalagmites joining together. Thousands of bats were hanging from the roof, and the lights disturbed them. They flew around wildly, and one bat knocked Becky's candle out. Tom grabbed her hand, and they ran through another passage to escape the bats. After a while, they reached a large underground lake and decided to rest. For the first time, they noticed the deep silence of the cave. Becky said, "It's been a long time since I heard any of the others." Tom replied, "We are far below them, and we couldn't hear them from here." Becky got worried. "We better start back." Tom agreed. "Yes, we should." Becky asked, "Can you find the way back, Tom? It all looks the same to me." Tom felt unsure but said, "I think so, but the bats might put out our candles. Let's try another way." They walked through a corridor in silence, looking for something familiar, but everything looked strange. Tom kept saying it was all right, but he felt less confident each time. They started turning into random passages, hoping to find their way. Tom kept saying it was all right, but the fear in his heart made the words sound like all is lost. Becky held on to him, crying and scared. Eventually, Becky said, "Tom, let's go back the way we came. We're getting more lost." Tom listened for a moment and then shouted, The echoes sounded like mocking laughter. Becky begged him not to shout again, but Tom thought it might help them get found. He shouted again, but there was no reply. Tom realized he couldn't find their way back. He confessed, "Becky, I was such a fool. I didn't think we might need to come back. We're lost." Becky cried and blamed herself for leaving the others. Tom tried to comfort her, but she was too upset. She clung to him, and they sat together in their fear and regret. They wandered aimlessly, hoping to find the way out. Tom blew out Becky's candle to save it, showing the seriousness of their situation. Becky understood and lost hope again. They were very tired but kept moving to avoid sitting down and giving up. Finally, Becky couldn't walk any further and sat down. They talked about home and their friends. Becky fell asleep, and Tom watched her peaceful face, which gave him some comfort. Becky woke up with a laugh, but then remembered where they were and groaned. Tom tried to keep her hopeful, saying they would find the way out. They wandered, trying to estimate how long they had been in the cave. Tom decided they should find a spring for water. They found one, and Tom suggested resting. Becky was hungry, and Tom took out a piece of cake they had saved from the picnic. They shared it, but it wasn't enough. Tom told Becky they had to stay near the water because it was their last candle. Becky cried, but Tom tried to comfort her. Becky said, "They'll miss us and hunt for us." Tom agreed, hoping they were already looking. Becky realized it might be a long time before they were missed, and they watched their candle burn down to the last bit. The darkness was terrifying. They tried to rest again, but hunger and fear kept them awake. Tom suggested exploring nearby passages with a kite line. They started exploring, but soon encountered a deep pit. They couldn't cross it and had to wait for rescuers. Tom shouted again, but the echoes were too scary. They returned to the spring, exhausted and hungry. Tom thought it must be Tuesday by now. He decided to explore another passage despite the risk of meeting Injun Joe. Becky was too weak and told Tom to go without her, but come back often. Tom kissed Becky and took the kite line, crawling through another passage. He was scared and hungry, but determined to find a way out. Within minutes, the news spread, and a dozen boats filled with men were heading to McDougal's cave, followed by a ferry boat packed with passengers. Tom Sawyer was in the boat with Judge Thatcher. When the cave door was unlocked, a sad sight met their eyes in the dim light. Injun Joe lay dead on the ground, his face close to the crack of the door, as if he had been staring longingly at the light and freedom outside. Tom felt sorry for him, knowing from his own experience how much Injun Joe had suffered. Despite his pity, Tom felt a great sense of relief and security, realizing how much fear he had been carrying since testifying against Injun Joe. Injun Joe's Bowie knife lay nearby, its blade broken. The door's foundation beam had been chipped and hacked with great effort, but the rock outside had prevented any escape. Even if the beam had been fully cut away, Injun Joe couldn't have squeezed under the door. He had hacked at the beam to pass the time and occupy his tortured mind. Normally, there would be bits of candle left by tourists, but there were none now. Injun Joe had eaten them. He had also caught and eaten a few bats, leaving only their claws. He had starved to death. Near him, a stalagmite had been broken off, and on its stump he had placed a stone with a hollow to catch drops of water that fell every 3 minutes. That drop had been falling for thousands of years and would continue to fall long after the events of history had faded. Tourists now stared longest at that stone and slow-dripping water, finding Injun Joe's cup more fascinating than any other wonder in the cave. Injun Joe was buried near the cave's entrance, and people came from nearby towns and farms to attend his funeral, bringing their children and food. They confessed that they had almost as good a time as they would have had at a hanging. This event stopped the petition to the governor for Injun Joe's pardon, which had been signed by many and supported by tearful meetings. The morning after the funeral, Tom took Huck to a private spot to have an important talk. Huck had already learned about Tom's adventure from the Welshman and the widow Douglas, but Tom had something new to share. Huck's face saddened, thinking he knew what it was. "You got into number 2 and found nothing but whiskey. No one told me it was you, but I figured it out. I knew you hadn't found the money because you would have told me. I always felt we'd never get that treasure." Tom replied, "I never told on that tavern keeper. The tavern was fine when I went to the picnic. Remember you were supposed to watch it that night?" Huck remembered, saying it seemed like a year ago. He then shared his adventure, following Injun Joe to the widow's. He warned Tom to keep it secret, fearing revenge from Joe's friends. Huck sighed and said, "Whoever took the whiskey in number 2 took the money too. It's gone for us." "Huck, the money was never in number 2, Tom revealed. Huck's eyes lit up as Tom explained, "The money's in the cave." Huck's excitement grew. "Tom, are you serious?" "Serious as ever? Will you help me get it?" "Of course, if we can find our way without getting lost." Tom assured him it would be easy. They gathered supplies, including bread, meat, pipes, bags, kite strings, and matches. Borrowing a skiff, they set off. Tom navigated by a white landslide mark on a bluff and led Huck to a hidden hole in the sumac bushes. Tom proudly showed the hidden entrance, planning to use it for their robber gang. They entered the hole, using kite strings to find their way. They reached the spring where Tom and Becky had watched their candle go out. The place's gloom made them whisper. Tom led Huck to the jumping-off place, revealing a steep clay hill instead of a cliff. They climbed down and found a cross marked in candle smoke. Tom declared, "That's where I saw Injun Joe." Huck wanted to leave, fearing Injun Joe's ghost. Tom reassured him, saying ghosts wouldn't be near a cross. Encouraged, Huck agreed to search for the treasure. They found footprints and candle grease near a rock and started digging. Tom's knife hit wood, uncovering a chasm under the rock. They crawled through, finding the treasure box, guns, and other items. Excited, they moved the money to bags and planned their next steps. They left the guns for future robberies and emerged from the cave. Lunching and smoking by the skiff, they set off as the sun set, chatting cheerfully. Tom suggested hiding the money in the widow's woodshed and returning the next day to count and divide it. They borrowed a wagon and headed to the Welshman's house, where they were urged to hurry to the widow Douglas. Huck, worried about being falsely accused, was reassured by the Welshman. They were welcomed at the widow's house, where many villagers were gathered. Covered in clay and candle grease, they were given new clothes and told to clean up before joining the others. Huck said, "Tom, we can get out of here if we find a rope. The window isn't far from the ground." "Why do you want to leave?" Tom asked. "Well, I'm not used to this kind of crowd. I can't stand it. I'm not going down there, Tom." "Oh, come on. It's nothing. I don't mind it. I'll take care of you." Sid appeared and said, "Tom, Aunt Polly has been waiting for you all afternoon. Mary got your Sunday clothes ready, and everyone's been worried. And what's that on your clothes? Grease and clay? Never mind that, Siddy. What's all this fuss about anyway? It's one of the widow's parties. This time it's for the Welshman and his sons because they helped her the other night. And guess what? I can tell you something if you want to know. Well, what? Old Mr. Jones is planning a big surprise for everyone tonight. I overheard him tell Aunt Polly about it as a secret, but now everyone knows, even the widow. He insisted Huck had to be here for it. Surprise about what, Sid? About Huck tracking the robbers to the widow's house. Mr. Jones wanted to make a big deal out of it, but I bet it won't be much of a surprise now. Sid chuckled contentedly. Sid, was it you that told? Oh, never mind who told. Somebody did. That's enough. Sid, there's only one person mean enough to do that, and it's you. If you'd been in Huck's place, you'd have sneaked away and never told anyone about the robbers. You can't do anything good and can't stand to see others praised for doing good things. Tom cuffed Sid's ears and kicked him to the door. Now go and tell Aunt Polly if you dare, and tomorrow you'll get it. Some minutes later, the widow's guests were at the supper table, and a dozen children were seated at little side tables. At the right time, Mr. Jones made his speech, thanking the widow and revealing Huck's role in the adventure. The surprise was not as grand as he hoped, but the widow showed great gratitude to Huck. She said she would give him a home and an education and, when she could, start him in business. Tom saw his chance. Huck doesn't need it. Huck's rich. Everyone thought it was a joke and kept silent awkwardly. Tom broke the silence. Huck's got money. Lots of it. Oh, you don't believe me? Just wait a minute. Tom ran outside. The company looked at each other in confusion, and then at Huck, who was speechless. Sid, what's gotten into Tom? Aunt Polly asked. Well, there's no figuring that boy out. Tom returned, struggling with the weight of 2 sacks. He poured out the yellow coins onto the table. There! What did I tell you? Half of it's Huck's and half of it's mine. Everyone was shocked into silence, then demanded an explanation. Tom provided one, telling the whole story with great detail and excitement. When he finished, Mr. Jones said, I thought I had a good surprise, but it's nothing compared to this. The money was counted, totaling over $12,000. It was more money than anyone there had ever seen at once, though some owned more in property. Tom and Huck's newfound wealth caused quite a stir in the small village of St. Petersburg. Such a large sum of money, all in cash, seemed unbelievable. People talked about it constantly, marveled at it, and it became the main topic of conversation. The excitement was so intense that many villagers nearly lost their wits. Every haunted house in the village and nearby areas was searched for hidden treasure, not by boys, but by serious grown men. Tom and Huck were suddenly the center of attention, admired and respected. Their words were valued, and everything they did was considered remarkable. The local newspaper even published biographical sketches of the boys. The widow Douglas invested Huck's money at 6% interest, and Judge Thatcher did the same with Tom's money at Aunt Polly's request. Each boy now had a prodigious income, earning $1 for every weekday and half of the Sundays. This was a significant amount in those simple days, enough to board, lodge, school, and clothe a boy. Judge Thatcher held a high opinion of Tom, believing no ordinary boy could have rescued his daughter from the cave. When Becky told her father how Tom had taken her punishment at school, the judge was moved. When she explained the lie Tom had told to protect her, he declared it a noble and generous act, comparing it to George Washington's truth about the hatchet. Becky admired her father more than ever, and quickly told Tom about his reaction. Judge Thatcher hoped to see Tom become a great lawyer or soldier. He planned to ensure Tom was admitted to the National Military Academy and trained at the best law school. Huck's wealth and the widow Douglas's protection introduced him to society, much to his discomfort. The widow's servants kept him clean and neat, and he had to follow strict rules. Huck found this new life unbearable. He had to eat properly, attend church, speak properly, and follow a rigid schedule. After 3 weeks, Huck ran away. For 2 days, the widow and the townspeople searched for him, fearing he had drowned. On the 3rd morning, Tom found Huck hiding in an old hogshead near the abandoned slaughterhouse. Huck explained his misery to Tom, saying he couldn't stand the strict civilized life with the widow. He hated the routine and the lack of freedom. Huck wanted to return to his old, carefree life. Tom urged him to give it another try, promising that it would get easier. Huck was reluctant, but agreed to return to the widow for a month if Tom would let him join the robber gang. Tom agreed, and they planned to start the gang soon. Tom explained the initiation process, which involved swearing loyalty to each other and signing an oath in blood. Huck was excited about the gang and decided to stick with the widow in hopes of becoming a notorious robber one day. Conclusion. This story ends here because it is a history of a boy, and continuing further would make it a history of a man. When writing about adults, a story typically ends with a marriage. But when writing about children, it must stop where it can. Most of the characters in this book still live and are happy. Someday, it may be worth revisiting their stories to see what kind of men and women they became. For now, it is best to leave their futures unrevealed.